Chapter 1334. These containers that were carved with complicated patterns were jade bottles. They were sparkling and translucent, emitting a gentle luster. All the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor focused their gazes on these jade bottles. Their gazes were burning with passion, even more fanatical than when they stared at the gold, silver, and jewelry. Under Yi Meiyu's calm appearance, a storm was raging in her heart. He was also looking forward to the resurrection of the Yellow Emperor. This time, they had gathered here to resurrect the Yellow Emperor. Some time ago, they had spent a lot of energy and manpower to search for the life totem. They had all visited the 8 life totem lands formed by nature and carefully avoided the people sent by Tang Zheng. Those who participated in this operation were all the elites of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. There were even a few times when Mo Xie personally took action. Naturally, it was very easy and did not alarm Tang Zheng's men. Tang Zheng was still in the dark. He thought that his plan was flawless and did not give the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor an opportunity to obtain the pure yang energy between heaven and earth. However, what they didn't know was that Mo Xie had already obtained everything he wanted without leaving a single trace. Gathering the soul of the Golden Crow again and allowing the Yellow Emperor to reappear in the world was not too far-fetched. Mo Xie waved his hand, and all the jade bottles flew into the air and arranged themselves in a certain order. The former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor moved and spread out in all directions, forming a strange formation. Everyone raised their hands high and chanted. Waves of magic power spread out from their bodies and enveloped the air. "Open!" Mo Xie shouted, and the seal of the jade bottle automatically unlocked. Waves of pure yang energy flew out from the jade bottle and instantly gathered in the air, resonating with the magic power. Mo Xie was in high spirits, and a ray of light flew out from his hand. It was the Ganjiang sword, and the blood-red sword light dyed half of the sky red. The Ganjiang sword steadily stopped in midair, at the center of the intersection of the two forces. Soul of the Golden Crow, gather. Back then, the souls of the Golden Crow were all hit by the sun shooting arrows and exploded into pieces, scattering on Sky Mountain. Mo Xie's plan was to use the pure yang energy to gather the souls of the Golden Crow scattered on Sky Mountain like a magnet. Without a doubt, this was a very clever plan. It was much faster than searching for the soul of the Golden Crow in every corner. Sky Mountain was too big, and the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were too few. They were not able to handle such a large amount of work. This time, they had gathered at the peak of Sky Mountain under the cover of night to avoid being noticed by others. They wanted to gather the scattered souls of the Golden Crows. Actually, ever since he knew Mo Xie, Tang Zheng, and Tang Zheng. However, these people were Mo Xie was the Golden Crow Yi. Taking advantage of the darkness of the night, Mo Xie used a camouflage technique to avoid these people and successfully cast a spell on Heavenly Mountain. Mo Xie had learned to be smart. She did not make a big fuss. Instead, she was sneaky. She even set up restrictions to prevent outsiders from seeing the signs of the spell. Therefore, the people that Tang Zheng had sent to investigate the vicinity of Sky Mountain did not notice anything unusual. They did not realize that this was an unusual night. When Mo Xie's voice fell, the sword radiance of the Ganjiang sword surged. A blood-red light rushed into the sky, and the sword hummed continuously. The pure yang energy gathered around the Ganjiang sword. Under the control of a mysterious power, it was like a giant magnet, rapidly absorbing the souls of the Golden Crow on Sky Mountain. A spot of light rose from a corner of the sky, like a firefly, and gathered at the peak of Sky Mountain. Another spot of light rose into the sky. These spots of light were the souls of the Golden Crow scattered in every corner of Sky Mountain. Not long after, countless spots of light rose from Sky Mountain and streaked across the sky. They were more dazzling than a meteor shower and gathered at the Ganjiang sword. Finally, Tang Zheng's people on the Heavenly Mountain discovered some clues, and all of them stared at the scene in shock. What's going on? These people looked at each other, unable to figure out what was going on. In the sky, more and more spots of light gathered together, becoming bigger and bigger. The pitch-black sky slowly brightened, like the dawn of the rising sun. Xie and the others were overjoyed when they saw this scene. This was the beginning of success. Everyone was even more focused as they continued to cast their spells. Unknowingly, a sun hung in the sky. The sunlight immediately dispelled the darkness, and the peak of Sky Mountain became as bright as day. Light shot in all directions, and not long after, the foot of Sky Mountain also became bright. The souls of the Golden Crow. The souls of the Golden Crow. Tang Zheng's subordinates finally noticed something and shouted, "Quick, report this. This is the work of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Damn it, they must be using a camouflage to avoid us." Some smart people immediately understood the reason and stomped their feet hatefully. They immediately dialed Tang Zheng's number. In the middle of the night, Tang Zheng, who was far away in the capital, was woken up by the ringing of his phone. He sat up straight as if he had a spring installed. "Hello. Master, the souls of the Golden Crow have been reunited," a witch shouted impatiently, her voice trembling. Tang Zheng jumped to the floor with a bang. His sleepiness was completely gone, and the hand that was holding the phone couldn't help but tighten. "What did you say?" This cry of alarm woke the person on the bed. Wu rubbed his eyes and sat up from the bed asking, "What's wrong?" Tang Zheng gestured for him to keep quiet. Wu understood and his heart trembled. He quickly got off the bed and stood beside Tang Zheng, looking at him worriedly. "I don't know what method the Yellow Emperor's subordinates used, but they are reuniting the souls of the Golden Crow." The other party took a deep breath and repeated, "The soul of the Golden Crow has been reunited." Tang Zheng finally heard it clearly, but he couldn't help but shout loudly. His voice was so loud that he was shocked. Suddenly, a ray of light shone in from the window. It was like a ray of morning light, dispelling the darkness in the room and landing on Tang Zheng's shoulder. Tang Zheng bathed in the sunlight, his body dyed golden. His brows immediately furrowed into a Chuan character as he looked at the sunlight in the sky. Wu looked at the clock on the wall. It was clearly 2 in the morning. She immediately opened her mouth wide and her chin almost fell to the ground. "It's only the middle of the night, how can there be a sun?" Hearing this, Wu couldn't help but exclaim, but Tang Zheng's heart sank to the bottom. He already understood that all of this was caused by the soul of the Golden Crow being reunited. That meant that this world would be plunged into misery and suffering. The people outside the house were also frightened by this scene. The witches all raised their heads to look at the sky, thinking that they were seeing things. At the same time, many of the night owls who had not slept in the middle of the night were completely dumbstruck by this scene. On the streets and alleys, on the rooftops of various buildings, many people gradually gathered as they watched this inconceivable scene. Although many unimaginable things had happened all over the world in the past year, the sun in the middle of the night was still shocking. "Master, what should we do now?" The voice on the phone finally pulled back Tang Zheng's thoughts. His heart trembled as he said in a deep voice, "Don't fight head-on. First, find out the situation of the witch clan and report to me at any time." After hanging up the phone, Tang Zheng rushed out of the bedroom. Wu, wearing a thin nightgown, chased after him. Upstairs, the other rooms opened one after another. Everyone saw Tang Zheng and Wu walking out of the same room. No one was surprised. The relationship between them was already half open. Everyone knew that it was normal for them to sleep together in the middle of the night. There was no need to make a fuss. "The sun is out?" Someone pointed out the window and exclaimed. The others also nodded. They were obviously frightened by this scene. Tang Zheng comforted him in a deep voice, "Everyone, don't panic for the time being." These people had basically experienced several life and death battles, and their nerves were already very strong. They were not too worried, and after hearing Tang Zheng's words, they all asked what was going on. Tang Zheng did not hide anything and said truthfully, "The former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor are reuniting with the soul of the Golden Crow." "Well, then wouldn't that be another 10 days? No 9 suns in the sky?" Tang Zheng remained silent, which could be considered as a tacit agreement. In the middle of the night, without nature's own sun, the 9 souls of the Golden Crow rose into the sky, which meant that there were only 9 so-called suns. Then what should we do? This news really shocked everyone. They all asked for countermeasures, and all kinds of suggestions began to be made. But in the end, they all looked at Tang Zheng, waiting for him to make the final decision. Although Tang Zheng was very anxious, he was not in a hurry. He methodically arranged, Empyrean Fairy, Thundercloud Beast, Scarlet Lunar Beast, we will go to Sky Mountain to stop the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. Tian Chanzi, you and the others will stay at home and protect yourselves. If anything happens, contact me immediately. He had to be constantly on guard against the attacks of the Demon Clan or other hostile forces, so there must be someone important at home. But this time, they would definitely need a powerful force to stop the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. The Empyrean Fairy and the other mythical beasts could work together to maximize their effectiveness. As for Xiaobai, if it woke up, it would be even more effective. However, this little guy seemed to have not completely digested the things it had absorbed and was still hibernating. Tang Zheng had gone through many tests and established an absolute WeChat. Therefore, when he said these words, no one questioned or refuted, which saved a lot of time. Somersault Cloud. Tang Zheng shouted without hesitation. The somersault cloud appeared outside the door. The others went back to their rooms to change their clothes and jumped on the somersault cloud. Then, they flew toward Sky Mountain. The light on Sky Mountain became more and more intense. The second soul of the Golden Crow had already risen. The hot air dispersed the cold wind in the middle of the night. The scorching heat descended on the earth, and the temperature rose rapidly. When they saw the second soul of the Golden Crow, the ordinary people immediately remembered the scene of the 10 suns in the sky a long time ago. It caused a lot of chaos. Could it be that 10 suns were going to rise in the middle of the night? At that time, the heat would be unbearable, and everyone would die from the heat. Panic immediately spread through the streets and alleys. Moreover, the soul of the Golden Crow gradually woke people up from their sleep. Suddenly, the whole land woke up in the middle of the night. Chapter 1335. The earth woke up in the middle of the night, and so did the people who lived there. They looked at the scene in horror. Looking at the 2 suns above their heads, the memories in the depths of their minds came back, and they were scared stiff. The smart ones immediately found a place to hide. Otherwise, when more suns rose in the sky, they would be roasted into human jerky. Everywhere was in chaos. Inside the high walls of the inner palace, 100 Faces, who was disguised as the leader, stood in front of the bed. When the first sun rose, he sensed something and got up. The mechanical warriors also came to his door, as if they were facing a great enemy. Junko also got up from the bed. She was naked, and her slim body made people's blood boil. 100 Faces did not turn his head, and he looked at the sky in a daze. Junko hooked her hands around 100 Faces' waist, leaned her chin on his shoulder, and pressed her soft chest against his back. She whispered, "Master, what's going on?" She was obviously frightened by the strange phenomenon in the sky, and her eyes couldn't help but stare. 100 Faces said, "The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates are condensing the soul of the Golden Crow again." Junko was shocked. She understood the meaning of this sentence. She exclaimed, Then aren't we in danger? It's said that when the 10 suns shine in the sky, the world will be turned into a sea of fire, and the people will be plunged into misery and suffering." 100 Faces nodded. Yes, the soul of the Golden Crow is indeed extraordinary. Then, won't everything we have planned become meaningless? This world will not exist anymore. Junko asked. 100 Faces sneered. How can it be that easy? Do you think the others will just sit back and do nothing? I bet that Tang Zheng must be rushing to Tianshan without stopping. Junko's expression turned cold when she heard this name. This name had caused her too much shock and confusion. Can he stop all of this? The corner of the 100 Transformations Star Sovereign's mouth hooked up into a playful smile, and said meaningfully, "Don't underestimate Tang Zheng's strength and determination. I watched him rise step by step, and my understanding of him also increased. He is soft-hearted and has great love for the people of the world. How could he watch as innocent people suffer such an undeserved calamity?" Junko curled her lips and said disapprovingly, "That's because he's a hypocrite. Is he deliberately acting like this? What great love! Is he that selfless?" The 100 Transformations Star-Lord smiled and declined to comment. What should we do? Are we not going to do anything? Junko paused for a moment and then asked worriedly, what if we are not prepared at all, and Tang Zheng is stopped from being one of the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor? What should we do then? Don't worry. Even if he doesn't succeed, there's still that guy, Chiyu, right? He was just tricked by Mo Xie and lost a great general like Saint King. How could he let this go? The 100 Change Star Monarch explained. Junko still wanted to ask more questions, but 100 Faces Star Lord turned around and hugged her. His body, which was more than 10 kilograms, was as light as a feather. Junko understood tacitly and immediately let out a soft cry. She hugged 100 Faces Star Lord's neck. Master, you're so bad. The 100 Faces Star Lord chuckled. A great battle had begun. At the same time, Chiyu looked up at the sky and immediately locked onto the two suns hanging high in the sky. He gritted his teeth and said, Mo Xie, you really want to resurrect the Yellow Emperor? Wishful thinking. Although Mo Xie kept talking big and didn't put the Yellow Emperor in his eyes, he was still very afraid of the Yellow Emperor and didn't want him to be resurrected. After all, the Yellow Emperor had defeated him before. This was a battle of strength, an ironclad fact that he couldn't deny. If the Yellow Emperor was resurrected, he would definitely be a huge threat to him. Chiyu was like a ray of light as he soared into the sky and flew towards Sky Mountain. This time, he didn't bring any of his subordinates and chose to travel alone. If he wanted to ruin Huang Mo Xie's plan, he alone was enough. In the new secret base of the Azure Dragon Palace, in front of a stone room, Granny Li stood respectfully. My lord, the soul of the Golden Crow has been reunited. A disaster is coming. If we don't act now, the world will cease to exist and the martial artists will never have a place to stand. Granny Li said earnestly, almost tearing up. The stone room was very quiet and no one answered her. Bang! Granny Li's legs went soft and she knelt on the ground. She raised her voice and shouted, My lord, it'll be too late if we don't act now. If it was something else, Granny Li could ignore it or deal with it herself. This time, it was the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor who had gathered the soul of the Golden Crow to resurrect the Yellow Emperor. She didn't have the power to stop it. Only the great Lord Ji Wuxiang had the power to do so. That was why she knelt in front of the stone room and begged the great lord in tears. The great lord had been in seclusion for a long time and didn't see anyone. No one knew his specific situation. Granny Li would never disturb him unless it was a last resort. Just like the last earthquake in Dianan, she personally led people to deal with it. Although what she saw and heard later was far beyond her imagination, it didn't threaten the survival of the Azure Dragon Palace. A gust of wind rose from the ground and blew the leaves in front of the stone room. Granny Li was startled and seemed to have sensed something. She raised her head and stared at the stone room, not knowing what had happened. A surge of energy enveloped her, causing her to panic. She hurriedly circulated her inner energy, attempting to block this surge of energy outside the door. However, all her efforts were in vain and didn't have any effect at all. She stood up slowly and couldn't kneel anymore. Her heart skipped a beat and her eyes flashed with ecstasy. She stared at the stone room with joy. Frick, frick. An awkward sound was heard. The stone room shook as if it was going to fall apart. Cracks appeared on the wall. A stone flew up from the wall. Then the other stones flew up and floated in the air as if they were alive. Granny Li looked at the scene in shock. It seemed simple, but it was caused by an invisible force. She didn't have the strength to do it. All of this is the Great Lord's doing. Could it be that he has passed the obstacle? How strong is he? No one answered her question. When the last stone, the huge stone door, flew up, the Great Lord's figure was finally revealed. He stood in the middle of the rocks, and the rocks surrounded him like a responsible bodyguard. The Great Lord raised his foot and walked forward. The stones followed his footsteps and moved forward. This scene was extremely shocking to ordinary warriors because they couldn't do it. Granny Li was not a weak-kneed person, but when she saw this scene, it was as if she had seen a god. She had an impulse to bow down. But she shouted in a daze. The Great Lord's eyes were deep as if there was endless magic. After locking onto Granny Lee, she had an illusion that she was deeply trapped. "Thank you for your hard work." Granny Lee's tears gushed out of her eyes. She felt that it was worth it to hear him say that it was hard. She was the only one who knew the bitterness of it all. Without the Great Lord, it was impossible for her to support the huge Azure Dragon Hall. If she didn't have a certain dignity before, it would be impossible for her to do it. From now on, the era of warriors has arrived. The Great Lord's voice was very magnetic. It even had a kind of bewitching magic. Granny Lee was intoxicated by his voice and muttered to herself, "The era of warriors? Yes, it belongs to us warriors. What kind of world is it?" Granny Lee was at a loss. She didn't know what to do. The Great Lord smiled and looked up at the sky. He looked at the two suns indifferently and said, "Feel it yourself." As soon as his voice fell, Granny Lee didn't have any specific feeling. The stars in the sky twinkled. However, the light of the stars was completely covered by the sunlight of the two suns. If it was still a dark night, the light of thousands of stars twinkling at the same time would also illuminate the earth. That scene would certainly be very shocking. The power of the stars fell from the sky and fell on Granny Lee. She was startled and looked at the sky in disbelief. Then she looked at the indifferent Great Lord. She stuttered for a long time, but couldn't say a complete sentence. This was because this scene was simply too shocking. Her body was being rapidly transformed by the power of the stars, and the results were remarkable. Her cultivation soared like a rocket. She was the one involved, so she naturally felt it the most deeply. In addition, she had cultivated for most of her life, but she had never felt such surging power and rapid cultivation speed. Her worldview was almost turned upside down. Feel it quietly. This is the era of martial artists. The power of the stars is the noblest power in the world. What spiritual energy of heaven and earth? We martial artists disdain absorbing spiritual energy of heaven and earth because what belongs to us is the noblest power of the stars. Moreover, when we used the power of the stars in the past, outsiders would always find clues, especially Tangjing. Now, we don't have to worry about this problem. As long as it is under my control, the power of the stars is invisible. We don't have to worry about being discovered by outsiders. The Great Lord's provocative voice sounded in Granny Lee's ears. In the past, the Great Lord had said similar words, but not as arrogant as this time. Moreover, he had helped other warriors to absorb the power of the stars. Granny Lee had also felt it before, but it was completely different from this time. This was a qualitative leap. If every warrior's cultivation speed was so fast, then what was there to be afraid of? Immediately, Granny Lee's confidence increased, and she was in high spirits. When the power of the stars in her body gradually calmed down, she excitedly said incoherently, "From now on, it's it's your era, Great Lord." A smug expression appeared on the High Lord's face. Although he appeared to be indifferent, in the depths of his heart, what he had done had already surpassed the ancients. What new era? He had only banished all the cultivators in the world to the sky beyond heaven, but he had not fundamentally changed the race of warriors. However, the Great Lord had done it. He would completely change the warriors. Not only their living conditions, but he would also reshape the cultivation system of warriors. This was an unprecedented masterpiece. Any genius would not be worth mentioning in front of the Great Lord. Chapter 1336. Granny Lee gradually calmed down from her shock. Looking at the third sun in the sky, her attention was attracted again. She asked, "My lord, it's already 3 suns. What should we do?" At this moment, she had absolute confidence that the Lord could defeat the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates and stop this disaster. The Lord remained calm and said lightly, "This world will belong to the martial artists. If others can't survive this disaster, then it's their fate." Granny Lee's heart skipped a beat. She immediately understood the meaning of the Lord's words. He was going to stand by and do nothing. "Sure enough," the Lord continued, "this is a sin committed by the cultivators. It can let others know more about the cruelty of the cultivators. It's good for us. Why should we stop it? But Granny Lee wanted to refute, but she swallowed her words. She had never been soft-hearted. Her mind flashed and she understood the Lord's intention. He wanted to let the world know about the evil of the cultivators through this incident. Then, they would hate the cultivators and naturally fall into the arms of the martial artists. Although the Lord was confident in his own strength, he was still a modern man. He understood the importance of the general public. He would not be like the ancient kings who ignored the general public. Instead, he would follow the will of the people and use it to his advantage. This was his wisdom. My lord, this time, someone will definitely stop the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Will they succeed? At this time, Granny Lee was a little worried that the soul of the Golden Crow could not be fully condensed and the world would see the sins of the cultivators. If that happened, the Lord's plan would be disrupted. As for the life and death of ordinary people, Granny Lee did not care at all. Hearing this, the Lord did not care at all. He said, whether it succeeds or not, when the people see the suns hanging above their heads again, the fear and uneasiness in their hearts will be aroused again. This time, it will be completely aroused. They will not sit still and wait for death. For their lives, these people will do anything. The cultivators will definitely become the target of scorn, hated by everyone. Granny Lee felt as if she was suddenly enlightened. She kept praising the High Lord's foresight and wisdom. In the sky, a white cloud swept across the horizon. Tang Jing, Li Xiaoyan, and the Empyrean fairy stood on the somersault cloud. Before leaving, Tang Jing suddenly remembered that Li Xiaoyan was not part of this trip. After all, the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrows already belonged to her. Moreover, she had also cultivated Hoi's archery, which was a trump card against the soul of the Golden Crow. The three of them gazed into the distance in the direction of Heavenly Mountain. From time to time, he would look up at the sky. There were already 3 suns. The number was increasing so quickly that it made people speechless. It also gave people a deep sense of unease. A scorching heat wave rolled down from the sky and covered their bodies. Fortunately, they were not ordinary people. Circulating their martial arts, they were able to withstand the heat wave. However, the others were not so lucky. In the streets and alleys, the ordinary people were already drenched in sweat. Their moisture was quickly evaporating, and they looked like they were about to turn into human jerky. Many people directly jumped into the water, but the water was also steaming and quickly evaporated. Flames rose into the air from many places, and alarms rang out everywhere. Everyone felt a sense of despair, as if the god of death had descended. But at the same time, there was a strong anger in their hearts. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Cultivators, this is the evil of cultivators. They want to destroy humanity. Cultivators are the public enemy of humanity. Similar thoughts appeared in many people's minds, accompanied by anger that burned fiercely. In view of the previous few grand and earth-shattering events, cultivators were no longer an absolute secret group. Although the authorities had sealed off the real news and issued various seemingly scientific explanations, the ordinary people did not completely calm the panic in their hearts. They had also heard about the cultivators from various sources and rumors on the streets. It turned out that there was such a huge group of people hidden in the crowd. At that time, people did not have a direct impression of the likes and dislikes of the cultivators, nor did they have an absolute standpoint of benefits. But this time was different. The cultivators had caused all kinds of big events again and again, threatening the survival of the human race. Even a clay figurine had some anger. Moreover, this was a matter of life and death. They had no reason to retreat, and the hatred in their hearts for the cultivators grew day by day. Kill the cultivators, we are not willing to be sacrificial lambs. Yes, kill the cultivators. This group of bastards, even if we die, we will drag one of them down with us. Anger was contagious. It was as if there was an invisible hand controlling everything, causing the anger to become more and more intense. I heard that there are cultivators in a place. A very large area is occupied by these cultivators. Let's go find them and take revenge. Kill one and earn one. Yes, kill the cultivators. The crowd moved. The crowd was excited and crazily rushed towards a place. The heat wave caused the air they exhaled to be hot, as if it could ignite. Not long after, the crowd arrived at Tang Zheng's villa. This villa had been completely bought by him. Only his core members lived here, and almost all of them were cultivators. When the patrolling witches saw this group of excited people, they were shocked. Their attention was completely attracted by the soul of the golden crow in the sky. They did not expect that there would be people attacking the villa. Moreover, this group of people were clearly ordinary people. They were not martial artists, nor were they cultivators. They were a group of motley crew. 3 cobblers were better than Zhuge Liang, even if the other party's strength could not be compared to theirs. But after all, there were many of them. There was like a fortress. After twisting into a rope, the power that erupted was still not to be underestimated. The villa was protected by a large formation. The crowd could not break through it all. Although it was empty in front of them and there were no obstacles, the crowd was still blocked by an invisible wall. Bang bang bang. These people punched the protective barrier again and again, only to hear the sound of the air being torn apart. These people were rebounded by the huge force and were sent flying backwards. They could not break through the protective barrier at all. Instead, they were sent flying. However, this did not scare them away. Instead, it made them even more ferocious. They clamored to break through the protective barrier. Seeing this, the witches were helpless. They loudly advised them not to waste their energy and to leave this place quickly. Another sun appeared in the sky. 4 suns hung high in the sky, making the crowd even angrier. The people who were originally watching changed their attitude. Like the most ferocious beasts, they hysterically attacked the protective barrier. They did not listen to the witch's advice. They thought that the other party was afraid of them and deliberately gave in. Therefore, more and more people gathered outside the villa. Tian Chanzi and the others were at the entrance of the villa. They sized up this group of people without leaving a trace. The crowd was too far away, so they could not see their faces clearly. However, they could clearly feel the intensity of their anger. It was as if they could burn everything in the world. They looked at each other and discussed countermeasures. Boom! Chapter 1337. Flames burst forth and a loud rumbling sound rang out. The protective barrier trembled. Tian Chanzi and the others cried out in alarm, "They're using a bomb." Such a vicious explosion had occurred in the capital. This group of people were truly brazen and unscrupulous. They came prepared. The authorities definitely won't care. Tian Chanzi hit the nail on the head. The other people's expressions suddenly changed. You're saying that this is a planned operation? Then how do we deal with it? They're just ordinary people. How can they be our opponents? There's nothing to be afraid of. Someone said confidently, not caring at all. Tian Chanzi was the one who made the decision. He said in a deep voice, "Even so, are we really going to kill these ordinary people who don't even have the strength to truss a chicken?" The surroundings immediately quieted down. No one was willing to do that. Those were executioners, demons, not people like them. Tian Chanzi shrugged and said, "Then it's settled. They definitely won't be able to break through the protective barrier. Our worries are groundless." Yi Dingdang suddenly said, "Yes, this was set up by Tang Zheng. It's safe enough. They definitely won't be able to break through." The others agreed and couldn't help but sigh in relief. If they didn't confront these different people directly, then they could avoid bloodshed. The people outside the protective barrier were all fierce and ferocious. Most of them used to be ordinary people. No one would have thought that in the blink of an eye, they would become so crazy and unreasonable. They also saw Tian Chanzi and the others. A stream of obscenities came out of their mouths, making it hard for them to stop. Tian Chanzi and the others frowned when they heard this. However, they forcibly suppressed their anger and didn't rush up to confront them directly. "Get out of the way!" A shocking roar exploded in everyone's ears like a clap of thunder. The crowd was forcibly separated by a force, and a group of people walked straight in. Yan Qishan and Yan Luyun. Tian Chanzi and the others were shocked. What were they doing here? Before they could ask, insults and insults were thrown at them. "Hurry up and leave. What are you doing here? Yen Qishan followed the orders of his father, Yen Patian, and brought his son and a pair of elite soldiers to support him. Yen family was powerful, and when they discovered the situation outside the villa, they immediately reported it to Yen Patian. Yen Patian understood the seriousness of the matter. He guessed that Tangjing must have left the capital, and there might not be too much power left in the villa. If this group of angry people were allowed to attack, the consequences would be unimaginable. Because of this, he naturally had to send people to stop all of this. Yen Qishan's reprimand did not have any effect. Instead, he drew the anger onto himself. Looking at this group of people with extraordinary auras, one of them shouted, "They must be the accomplices of this group of cultivators. Kill them." As soon as he said this, his anger found an outlet, and he vented it all on the Yen family. The angry crowd rushed toward them like a swarm of bees. Although they were ordinary people, when they were united, they could still unleash a powerful force. Not to mention, there were also people who were fanning the flames and deliberately creating a conspiracy. Yen Qishan did not expect things to turn out like this. He was afraid that Yen Patian did not see the scene, and also made a wrong judgment. He did not expect that the elites he sent out would be at a disadvantage in front of ordinary people. Once there were more people, although the martial strength of these Yen family members was not low, they could not bear to harm ordinary people. This gave the crazy crowd a chance to grab hold of their weakness and attack them with everything they had. Bang! The sound of a gunshot rang out abruptly and ear-piercing, and a Yen family member fell to the ground. "They have guns!" Yen Qishan exclaimed. "Be careful!" Yen Qishan was both shocked and angry. Towards ordinary people, he felt pity for them. Originally, he only wanted to disperse them, but someone actually shot him in the back, which touched his bottom line. Yen family members watched as their companions sacrificed themselves, and all of them became furious. "Stop them and find the murderer!" Yen Qishan roared. Bang! Another gunshot rang out. The bullet shot straight towards Yen Qishan. However, he had a lot of battle experience and was strong, so this bullet did not take his life. He narrowly avoided it, and his gaze immediately locked onto a person in the crowd. He pointed at him and shouted, "Catch him for me!" A few Yen family members soared into the air, like a rock spreading its wings, and landed beside that person, trying to grab him. However, the people around them were not to be trifled with. They immediately reacted and stopped them. The two sides immediately clashed. The Yen family was already furious, so they did not show any mercy. A few people were knocked down to the ground, and although their lives were not in danger, their actions completely infuriated the crowd. They were like crazed wild beasts, attacking the Yen family members. The difference in numbers between the two sides was huge, and they were completely entangled. Tian Chanzi and the others saw this and shouted, "The Yen family members are here to help us. We can't turn a blind eye to them getting hurt." Therefore, a group of people immediately rushed out of the protective shield and fought with these people. The area was in a mess. Tangjing did not know the situation at home. He had already seen the fifth sun rise, and there were 4 more to the 9th sun. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were about to succeed. Sky Mountain finally came into view, and he immediately flew towards the mountain peak. From afar, he saw the battle on the mountainside. On one side were the people he had left behind, and on the other side were the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Tangjang's people did not wait for their deaths. They directly charged towards the mountain peak and broke through the camouflage of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. However, they were intercepted by the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates halfway up the mountain. Both sides suffered heavy casualties, and neither side retreated. The pure white snow on Sky Mountain had begun to melt. After the ice had melted for 10,000 years, it was like a mountain stream flowing down from the mountain peak. The sound of flowing water could be heard continuously. Finally, it gathered into a surging stream, washing away everything it passed. Sky Mountain seemed to have shed its outer layer, revealing its skin, hard rock. The stream did not completely flow to the foot of the mountain. A portion of it turned into steam and rose into the sky. The sky became dark, and dark clouds covered the sky. However, they were still unable to completely block out the dazzling light. The somersault cloud was extremely fast, and it flew to the mountain peak. Looking down, the Yellow Emperor's troops were still covered by the camouflage. Even though they were in midair, they could not see their figures. However, Tang Zheng knew that this group of people was hiding on the mountain peak. He had to rush down and completely destroy the camouflage before he could see them. Without any hesitation, he ordered the somersault cloud to dive down like a fighter jet. The air was filled with a sharp piercing sound. The Empyrean Fairy, Li Xiaoyan, the Thundercloud Beast, and the Scarlet Lunar Beast were all on full alert. They stared at the mountain peak with burning eyes. A beam of light from a Dharma treasure rose from the mountain peak and attacked the somersault cloud directly. Dodge! Tang Jing shouted. The somersault cloud nimbly dodged the attack and landed steadily on the mountain peak. One attack after another seemed to appear out of thin air, attacking them from all directions. The Empyrean Fairy frowned and shouted, "Break!" A wave of energy shot out from her body in all directions like a shockwave. In the blink of an eye, the scene around them changed drastically. The camouflage disappeared. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were all exposed in front of them. Everyone was casting their techniques. A portion of them attacked them while a portion of them used a secret technique to condense the Golden Crow's soul. Emo Xie and Yi Meiyu were among them. Tang Zheng waved his hand and used the sky-swallowing technique. A huge black hole sucked in the attacks from all directions. Then he shouted, "Emo Xie, stop. Are you trying to destroy this world and destroy humanity?" Emo Xie snorted in disdain. She glanced at him from the corner of her eyes and retorted, "Tang Jing, you're here to cause trouble again. You're really haunting us." If it wasn't for Tang Jing stopping them last time, they would have succeeded. They wouldn't have to go through so much trouble this time. "You're doing bad things. Naturally, I won't let you off." Tang Jing said righteously. "Who said this is bad? This is the master who revived me. He is your ancestor." Emo Xie said righteously. "Ancestor? If we have to sacrifice the lives of countless people to revive the so-called ancestor, then this ancestor is too cruel. How dare you?" Emo Xie glared at him. "You dare to speak such arrogant words and slander your ancestor." Tang Jing looked at the Golden Crow's soul that was slowly gathering in the sky from all directions. At this juncture, the sixth Golden Crow's soul had been successfully condensed. The 6 suns hung high in the sky, and the heavenly mountain had already become the hottest place in the world. The rocks gradually turned fiery red, and green smoke rose from them. However, to this group of cultivators, this kind of heat could still be resisted. It was just that everyone's expressions were extremely grim. Tang Zheng ignored Emo Xie's impassioned words, and directly gave Li Xiaotian a look, and said, "Use the shooting sun arrows, shoot down these Golden Crow's soul." Li Xiaotian was already eager to give it a try. After hearing Tang Zheng's words, he immediately took out the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows, opened the bow and pulled the arrow, and aimed it at the soul of the Golden Crow. She silently activated Ho Yi's archery method, and the shooting sun arrow immediately turned into a golden arrow. As if sensing the soul of the Golden Crow, the shooting sun arrow actually started to tremble. This wasn't fear, but excitement. The shooting sun arrows and the heaven-shocking bow were specially made to shoot down the soul of the Golden Crow. This was a pair of fated enemies. Meeting again, coupled with Li Xiaotian's use of Ho Yi's archery method, triggered a chain reaction. Li Xiaotian seemed to have understood something. This time, it was completely different from before, and another feeling flowed from the bottom of his heart. Ho Yi's archery method's golden arrow, shoot! Li Xiaoyan shouted, her fingers loosened, and the shooting sun arrow pierced through the sky. The golden arrow covered the resplendent sunlight in the sky, and shot towards a Golden Crow's soul. Emo Xie screamed out in fright. Last time, it was the shooting sun arrows and the heaven-shocking bow that shot down the soul of the Golden Crow, ruining his plans. This time, they came back again. Could it be that they were going to repeat the same mistake? He would never allow that. Chapter 1338. Mo Xie did have a countermeasure. He was not an idiot. Of course, he would not make the same mistake twice. He had already expected that someone would stop him. He could deceive them for a while, but he could not continue to deceive them. Without a doubt, the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrow were the greatest threats to the Golden Crow's soul. He had spent a lot of time and brain cells on how to avoid the attack of this divine weapon. The heavens did not disappoint those who were willing. He finally thought of a way. That was to form a telepathic connection with the Golden Crow's soul. This way, he could control the Golden Crow's soul to dodge the sun-shooting arrow and not be treated as a live target. Whiz! The shining sun-shooting arrow arrived in front of the Golden Crow's soul. In the next second, it seemed as if it was going to shatter the Golden Crow's soul into pieces and turn into strands of light. The corner of Mo Xie's mouth curled up into a mocking sneer. With a thought, he said to himself, "Dodge!" The soul of the Golden Crow quickly moved to the left, causing the sun-shooting arrow to miss. "Ha!" Tang Jing exclaimed. Last time, he had shot down the soul of the Golden Crow one by one. At that time, the soul of the Golden Crow was not so cunning as to be able to dodge the sun-shooting arrow in time. He suddenly stared at Mo Xie, and seeing his unfathomable smile, he came to a realization and shouted, "Crap, the soul of the Golden Crow has changed, it's not that easy to attack anymore." Strange, it can actually dodge the attack of the sun-shooting arrow. Empyrean Fairy was also amazed. "Haha, now you know what it means to be unstoppable, right? Your insignificant skills are useless now, it's impossible to threaten the soul of the Golden Crow. My master will finally be reborn today." Mo Xie laughed maniacally and shouted loudly. The expressions of Tang Zheng and the others became gloomy. Li Xiaotian did not believe it and clenched her teeth. Her confidence in the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrow was extraordinary, surpassing everyone else's, so she was not knocked down by a single mistake. She let out a shout, and the shooting sun arrow flashed with a golden light. Then, it made a turn in the air and shot toward another Golden Crow soul. The shooting sun arrow almost brushed past the soul of the Golden Crow, but it still missed. "Ha!" Mo Xie's laughter was even more complacent and ear-piercing, as if she was mocking them for overestimating themselves. Amidst the laughter, the seventh sun successfully condensed in the sky. It flickered with blazing light, as if adding oil to the fire on the earth. Tang Zheng's body, which was impervious to both heat and cold, also felt a sense of discomfort. A normal person would have difficulty surviving and would be struggling on the line between life and death. He suddenly had an idea and shouted, "Thundercloud Beast, move!" Whoosh! The Thundercloud Beast soared into the sky and transformed back into its original form. Its huge wings were like a dark cloud, covering the sky and blocking the sunlight. If it was an ordinary bird, its feathers would have long been set ablaze. However, the Thundercloud Beast was no ordinary bird. It flapped its wings fiercely, creating a gale that blew away a large portion of the heat wave. Even the fragments of light from the Golden Crow's soul were blown away. The eighth sun was about to condense successfully, but it immediately stopped due to this delay, not to mention the ninth sun. Mo Xie was furious and said, "Thundercloud Beast, you bastard, how dare you ruin my plans? Watch my Ganjiang sword." Whoosh. The Ganjiang sword flew up and pierced towards the Thundercloud Beast. Whoosh whoosh. The Thundercloud Beast flapped its wings and a gale blew against the Ganjiang sword. However, the Ganjiang sword's trajectory did not deviate at all. Just like before, it fiercely shot towards the Thundercloud Beast. A bolt of lightning flashed through the Thundercloud Beast's eyes. Its entire body flickered with crackling lightning. But the lightning landed on the Ganjiang sword. The Ganjiang sword finally tilted, but its attack did not decrease and still shot towards the Thundercloud Beast. Its huge body was like a living target. No matter how the Ganjiang sword tilted, it could still accurately hit it. The Ganjiang sword was about to hit the Thundercloud Beast. A trace of panic flashed through the Thundercloud Beast's eyes. With a flash of lightning, it quickly shrunk. In the blink of an eye, it turned back to the size of a puppy, narrowly dodging this attack. The Ganjiang sword almost brushed past its body. One could even feel the shock brought by the sharp sword chi. Thundercloud beast, let's see if you still dare to stir up trouble. Emosia laughed. He did not put the thundercloud beast in his eyes at all. The light spots of the golden crow's soul that had been blown away earlier quickly gathered again. The eighth sun seemed to be about to condense successfully. I definitely can't let him succeed. Tang Jing secretly clenched his teeth. This extreme heat seemed to be able to evaporate all the water in one's body. He did not know what it was like in other places. Cloud summoning rain. Tang Jing secretly shouted and used the dragon god technique. A mysterious power spread out in all directions. The dragon slayer was in a certain corner of this world. Using the dragon god technique at this time was definitely not a good idea. However, the consequences of this extreme heat were unimaginable. If it was allowed to continue developing, this world would really be destroyed. Thus, he abandoned his personal safety and used the cloud summoning rain. The dragon race's divine ability was indeed extraordinary. There were originally black clouds in the sky, which was the water evaporated from the ground. When he used the cloud summoning rain, the clouds immediately became thicker under the effect of the mysterious power. Kacha! A bolt of lightning fell from the clouds, as if it wanted to tear the sky apart. The light of the lightning and the sun reflected each other, and was especially dazzling. Torrential rain fell from the clouds, sprinkling onto the ground and onto everyone. Some of the people with weaker cultivations were immediately drenched. However, for the experts, the rain could not touch their bodies at all. An invisible power blocked the rain. The torrential rain immediately swept away the extreme heat, causing a refreshing feeling to attack one's heart, adding a sense of coolness. The clouds were still rapidly spreading in all directions. Everywhere it passed, the torrential rain swept away a portion of the extreme heat and immediately suppressed the flames on the ground. It was not enough to cause a huge fire to spread across such a large area. When the Empyrean fairy saw this, she also understood Tang Jing's good intentions. Without a doubt, the cloud summoning rain could not stop the soul of the golden crow from condensing. It could only prevent the world from being destroyed immediately, reduce the extreme heat, and make people feel better, so that they would not be dried up under the sun. Don't worry about the cloud summoning rain, I will stop Emosia. The Empyrean fairy said without hesitation. Her figure flashed, and she directly rushed towards Emosia. The clouds spread very quickly. Not long after, with the heavenly mountain as the center, the dark clouds covered a radius of tens of kilometers, hundreds of kilometers, and finally thousands of kilometers, bringing rain to these areas. The people cheered as they looked at the dark clouds. They were on the verge of tears. Many people knelt on the ground, kowtowing to the sky, muttering, "God, you have finally shown mercy, this rain is good." The sun was on one side, and the rain was on the other side. The rain and sunlight mixed together, and this was a sun rain. However, this rain did not fundamentally change the situation, it only alleviated the situation. When the rain fell on the ground, it was quickly evaporated by the sunlight and returned to the clouds. Even a part of the rain was evaporated before it fell to the ground. The clouds in the sky thickened again, and the water content was even higher. It was precisely because of this that Tang Jing could rely on his own strength to summon the cloud summoning rain over such a vast land. Otherwise, with his strength, he would not be able to cover such a large area. Tang Jing was very clear about this point. The so-called advantages and disadvantages, the soul of the golden crow evaporated the water on the ground, and he used this as a precondition to add a suitable fire, and let the ground be covered by the rain and the sun at the same time. This at least slowed down the pace of the world's destruction. Rain, evaporation, and rain again, this was like a cycle that repeated over and over. Tang Jing, what you are doing is futile, you can't completely change the situation. Emosia shouted. Tang Jing did not say a word, and only silently urged the dragon god technique to summon the cloud summoning rain. As long as he could save some people, then his efforts would be rewarded, and that would be enough. Emosia, you are still a so-called ancient powerhouse, but compared to Tang Jing, your awareness is more than 100,000 miles away. He is saving the masses of humanity, but you want to kill so many people for your own personal gain. You are really too vicious and merciless. The Empyrean fairy sternly accused. Emosia turned a deaf ear and said, "What is personal gain, what is great merit? Can a junior like you say it clearly? You still dare to boast and lecture me so shamelessly, the ignorant are fearless. You are already at the end of your rope, there is no other way, you should just give up this so-called struggle." Give up? I, the Empyrean fairy, do not have such a word in my dictionary. The Empyrean fairy soared into the air and summoned the mountain river map. The Ganjiang sword flashed and fiercely attacked the mountain river map. The Empyrean fairy was not afraid and hurriedly urged the mountain river map to fight with Emosia's Ganjiang sword. Back and forth, the light of treasures was extraordinary and the momentum was great. Emosia was distracted, and the speed at which the Golden Crow's soul condensed slowed down. The other old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor were incomparably anxious, but there was nothing they could do. However, there were smart people who immediately attacked Tang Zheng in groups of 3 to 5, and it was also a good thing to get rid of this big problem in their hearts first. Tang Zheng was fully focused on summoning the cloud-summoning rain, and had no time to protect himself. However, the Thundercloud Beast and Scarlet Lunar Beast stood in front of him to protect him, and did not allow the enemy to come even half a step closer. A tug-of-war began. The Thundercloud Beast's lightning attack was very frightening. When the lightning struck the enemy would emit black smoke and fall to the ground. The Scarlet Lunar Beast's tail was very powerful, and when it swept across and hit the enemy would be swept away. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor were not ordinary people, and the few people from before were too rash. After losing these few people, the others became cautious. Yi Meiyu stood at the back of the group. She did not rush forward rashly, as that was not her style. She was not a brute who only knew how to charge forward. She quietly moved and did not get close to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng had once broken her traceless dream, so she was rather afraid. She had her eyes on the Empyrean fairy. Chapter 1339. While the Empyrean fairy and Emosia were in the midst of a fierce battle, Yi Meiyu secretly came to a place not far away. She opened her hands and quietly cast the traceless dream. When she cast the spell, Emosia immediately sensed it. After all, he and Yi Meiyu had already cooperated with each other once. This tacit understanding made him immediately excited, but he remained calm and continued to activate the Ganjiang sword, fiercely attacking the Empyrean fairy. In the eyes of the Empyrean fairy, the Ganjiang sword was ferocious, so she immediately counterattacked. The stately painting swept up a gust of wind, revealing a huge rock that smashed towards the Ganjiang sword. Clang! With a loud bang, the Ganjiang sword was smashed right on the spot. The Ganjiang sword rapidly fell and stabbed into the rock. The Empyrean fairy's eyes flashed with a hint of complacency. She happened to see Tang Zheng being surrounded by the enemy and was in extreme danger. She shouted, "Be careful," and flew in front of Tang Zheng, protecting him and attacking the enemy. She did not notice the change in the eyes of the Tang Zheng behind her, and a strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Tang Zheng raised his hand, and a cold light flashed in his hand, stabbing towards the Empyrean fairy's back. When Emosia saw this, he was overjoyed. He and the Empyrean fairy had the same cultivation, both were at the first stage of the Mahayana realm. It could be said that they were on par, and it would not be easy to defeat the other party in a short period of time. Yi Meiyu's little trick happened to make up for this, and could help him end the battle quickly. Seeing the cold light silently stabbing towards the Empyrean fairy, Emosia seemed to have seen the dawn of victory. Taking advantage of this gap, he quickly cast a spell to condense the soul of the Golden Crow. Countless specks of light gathered towards the soul of the 8th Golden Crow and gradually took shape. The Empyrean fairy did not notice the change behind her at all. The god of death had already descended on her head, but she did not know. Normally, she would definitely have noticed. However, this was the dreamscape created by the traceless dream's sacred art. Her focus and reaction speed were greatly reduced. Fu Yao, be careful of Yi Meiyu's heart's dream, wake up quickly. A weak voice sounded in Empyrean fairy's ears. The voice was very weak, as if it came from a faraway place. She almost missed it. However, it was as if he had been enlightened. The Empyrean fairy quivered as if she had just woken up from a dream. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and charged forward. Yi Meiyu's attack missed. The cold light stopped at the position where the Empyrean fairy was standing. If she had not rushed forward for a distance, the cold light would have pierced through her back. The Empyrean fairy turned her head and happened to see this scene. Her consciousness immediately became clearer, and she kept telling herself that this was all a dream. Traceless dream had lost its effect. The appearance of Tang Jing underwent a tremendous change and turned into Yi Meiyu's appearance. The killing intent in the Empyrean fairy's eyes surged as she said, "You still want to use this method to kill me?" A ray of cold light flew out from the mountain river map and shot straight towards Yi Meiyu. Yi Meiyu panicked and immediately ran backwards in an attempt to avoid this attack. She was very clear about the difference between her and Yi Meiyu. Furthermore, as long as Traceless Dream lost its effect, her so-called attack would not be of much use. She wanted to dodge, but it was useless. The cold light pierced through her chest, bringing with it a flower of blood. She fell backwards with a loud bang, her eyes flashing with despair. "Be careful!" Mo Xie flew behind her and caught her, preventing her from falling into the bottomless abyss below the heavenly mountain. Mo Xie anxiously tapped on her body a few times. This time, the damage was very severe, passing through her right chest and almost injuring her heart. At the last moment, she dodged in time to avoid the vital point of her heart. "Don't worry, I'll save you." Mo Xie comforted her, circulating her energy to stabilize her injuries. Yi Meiyu's face was pale and her breathing was heavy. In that moment, she felt the threat of death and her heart seemed to have stopped beating. At this moment, she was finally still alive. She was extremely lucky and understood the beauty of being alive. Mo Xie put her down and looked up at the sky. The eighth soul of the golden crow had been condensed. The 8 suns shone in the sky. Although there was a sun rain, it was still extremely hot, almost melting people. When Tang Jing saw this scene, his heart turned cold. He had worked so hard, but the enemy was still approaching success step by step. Was there really no way to stop it? Empyrean Fairy's heart also darkened. She nodded towards Tang Jing and said, "Thank you." Just now, if not for Tang Jing noticing the clues in time and reminding her, she would have been killed by Yi Meiyu. Tang Jing bit his lips and said, "The situation is getting more and more dangerous. We have to help Li Xiaotian and successfully shoot down the soul of the golden crow." Empyrean Fairy also understood this point and nodded heavily. The soul of the golden crow was the key. They were fighting to the death with the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates, and the soul of the golden crow was still condensing. 4 symbols venerable. Tang Jing called out, and the 4 symbols venerable appeared on the mountain peak with a boom. In this great battle, he was unable to summon the Azura, because the scorching sun above his head was the absolute nemesis of the Azura. The yang qi brought by the few suns was far more powerful than the heavenly furnace array formation. Therefore, if the Azura appeared here, it would be courting death. It would definitely cause irreversible damage. Seeing the appearance of the 4 symbols venerable, Mo Xie was not afraid. Instead, he said jokingly, "Tang Jing, you want to destroy my plan with just this big guy? Wishful thinking. Today, the 9 souls of the golden crow will definitely be condensed successfully, and Master will definitely be revived." Mo Xie was resolute and decisive. Tang Jing's face was ashen as he shouted, "Dream on!" This time, Tang Jing directly abandoned the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates and rushed towards the soul of the golden crow, activating the sky-devouring technique. Since the sky-devouring technique could even absorb the savage aura, could it absorb the soul of the golden crow? It was impossible for the soul of the golden crow to completely disappear. Even if they successfully stopped Mo Xie this time and used the shooting sun arrows to shatter the soul of the golden crow, it would still be scattered in every corner of the world. Once the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates found a way to condense it, it would be another catastrophe, and the cycle would repeat. Mo Xie was not annoyed, but Tang Jing would be too. Therefore, he wanted to solve this problem once and for all. The only way he could think of now was to use the sky-devouring technique to absorb the soul of the golden crow. However, looking at the soul of the golden crow hanging high above his head, he was also anxious. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he would try again. Therefore, he activated the sky-devouring technique and rushed towards the soul of the golden crow. The two black holes in his palms merged into one, turning into a huge black hole. Whoosh whoosh. The air in front of him was completely sucked in, and the surging heat wave could not escape the attraction of the black hole. Seeing that he was about to get close, suddenly, a blazing power poured into his body from the top of his head. HM. Chapter 1340. Discovering the situation of the pure yang energy, Tang Zheng was shocked and cried out, "Oh no!" He suddenly realized that these suns shining in the sky would not only affect the Shura but also cause irreversible damage to him. At the same time, this was also fatal to him, especially when he was near the golden crow's soul. The yang energy emitted by the golden crow's soul was so strong that it would ignite the pure yang energy in his body. The pure yang energy was a fatal danger to him. He originally wanted to use the sky-swallowing technique to absorb the golden crow's soul, but now it was difficult to even get close to the golden crow's soul, let alone absorb it into the black hole. His expression suddenly sank, and his body also fell down. When the others saw this, they all cried out in alarm. They thought that Tang Zheng's attack would definitely explode with great power, but they never thought that it would be stopped halfway before it could be fully displayed. Tang Zheng, you overestimate yourself. You actually want to get close to the golden crow's soul. Others might be able to, but you definitely can't. Mo-Xie saw this and laughed wildly. This was a pleasant surprise that exceeded Mo-Xie's expectations. However, he immediately understood the reason behind it. Tang Zheng had the 9 yang saint body and contained a lot of pure yang energy. Normally, this pure yang energy was balanced by the pure yin energy and reached a state of balance. Once Tang Zheng got close to the golden crow's soul, this balance would be completely broken and Tang Zheng would not be able to control the pure yang energy. The taste of pure yang energy is very wonderful, right? Don't worry, I will let you slowly taste it and witness the arrival of my master. When the others heard this, they immediately understood the reason and the great danger that Tang Zheng was facing. The mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens immediately remembered the time when they were in the life totem. In order to save Tang Zheng, she had no choice but to offer her first kiss. Mouth to mouth, she fed her pure yin energy to Tang Zheng. That scene caused many ripples in her heart. In the dead of the night, when she recalled this scene, her heart would inexplicably throb. She gritted her teeth and threw away these messy thoughts. She did not rush to catch Tang Zheng. She was afraid that Tang Zheng would lose control and ask her for a kiss again. As the Empyrean fairy, she could not bring herself to do this in front of so many people. However, the other person did not have such concerns. When Li Xiaotian saw Tang Zheng falling from the sky, he subconsciously soared into the air and caught him. She couldn't help but cry out in surprise because Tang Zheng's body was too hot, like a furnace, making her subconsciously want to let go. But in the end, reason prevailed over her nature. She gritted her teeth and held on tightly to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was unbearably hot. Although he still had reason when Li Xiaotian hugged him, that cool pure yin energy entered through every pore of his body. It was as if he had suddenly fallen into a cold lake, refreshing his heart. He felt as if he had found a treasure and hugged her tightly. Li Xiaotian's heart tightened. She had been thinking about Tang Zheng for a long time, and this strong hug had stirred her thoughts. She was very clear about the danger of Tang Zheng's pure yang energy eruption. Now that his pure yang energy had erupted again, it was life-threatening. She also knew how to restrain pure yang energy. After hesitating for a moment, she did not hesitate to send her seductive lips to Tang Zheng's mouth. When their lips touched, an endless stream of pure yin energy was transmitted over, causing Tang Zheng to be startled. He did not expect Li Xiaotian to be so proactive, to the point of making such a huge sacrifice to save him. The two of them were very close to each other. Their eyes met and they communicated silently. Tang Zheng could see the determination in her eyes. He did not reject her good intentions. She was willing to make such a huge sacrifice to save him. If he rejected her good intentions, he would have let her down. However, this scene shocked everyone, especially Empyrean Fairy, who felt a little strange in her heart. If she did not hesitate, then perhaps the person who kissed Tang Zheng would be her. Thinking of this, her entire body trembled. She took a deep breath and quickly restrained these messy thoughts. Yi Meiyu was heavily injured and her aura was weak. When she saw this scene, she was furious. This damned Tang Zheng had rejected her embrace back then, yet he was still unclear with so many women. This was a great insult to her. It was equivalent to her being defeated by other women. Mo Xie opened his eyes wide. He obviously understood what this meant, and that was that Tang Zheng would not really be detonated by the pure yang energy. Separate the two of them. Mo Xie shouted. So. A few former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor soared into the sky, activating their magic treasure S to attack the two of them in the air. The two of them had no time to care, and could only watch as the magic treasure approached. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, a huge figure descended. The four symbols venerable protected the two of them, and the magic treasure S of the others were unable to get close to them. The two of them landed on the ground, but they were still hugging each other tightly. Their lips were even tighter, as if they wanted to fuse into each other's bodies. The restlessness in Tang Zheng's eyes gradually calmed down, and his eyes lit up with a trace of gratitude. Yes, he was very grateful to Li Xiaotian for stepping forward. If not for her, he would not have been able to control the restless pure yang energy. The consequences would have been unimaginable. Li Xiaotian seemed to be drunk, her cheeks flushed red. She had already cultivated the art of charm, and now she was even more charming and alluring. If it was someone else with a weak will, they would have been unable to control themselves after seeing this scene. However, Tang Zheng was not an ordinary person, and his will was unimaginably firm. Therefore, even though the beauty was good, he still let go of her. Their lips parted, and a trace of reluctance lingered in Li Xiaoyan's heart. "Thank you," Tang Zheng sincerely said. Li Xiaoyan's lips curled into a smile, and she pretended to be free and easy as she said, "It was nothing." No one noticed the bitterness in that smile. Tang Zheng restrained the pure yang energy and regained his vitality. He stared at the ninth golden crow's soul that was gathering in the sky, his face darkened, and said to Li Xiaoyan in an inaudible voice, "We must shoot down the soul of the golden crow, or else this world will be finished." Li Xiaotian's heart tightened, and she also abandoned her feelings. She knew that Tang Zheng's words were reasonable and said, "Why don't I give you the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows? Last time, you shot down the soul of the golden crow, so you can definitely do it this time." Tang Zheng shook his head slightly, rejecting her suggestion. "No, they can be of greater use in your hands. The situation this time is completely different from last time. Mo Xie can control the soul of the golden crow to dodge, even I can't shoot them down." Li Xiaoyan's face froze and asked worriedly, "Then what should we do?" Tang Zheng was silent. Because of the agitation of the pure yang energy, Tang Zheng had no choice but to stop the clouds and rain. Without rain to reduce the heat, the world seemed to have turned into a furnace, with countless flames jumping up from the ground. The scorching air was sucked into people's lungs. Immediately, their lungs felt as if they were on fire, burning their bodies. Countless people despaired, thinking that they had reached the end of their lives. In fact, even humans had reached the end. Tang Zheng looked at the sky, as if he was silently asking, had humans really reached the end? He gave a firm answer in his heart. "Let's aim at the same target. I'll lure it out and then, you find a chance to shoot it down." Tang Zheng used himself as bait, risking his life. Li Xiaotian immediately denied it. "No, the soul of the golden crow will detonate your pure yang energy again. It's too dangerous. There's no time, this is the only way. If sacrificing myself can shoot down this damned golden crow soul, then I'll accept it." Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and said hatefully. Li Xiaotian stared at him with burning eyes and said, "Is it worth it?" Tang Zheng nodded without hesitation, "Because, in this world, there are too many people that I care about." "Am I one of them?" Li Xiaoyan hesitated for a moment, but finally asked. Tang Jing rubbed her hair, smiled slightly, and said with an unquestionable tone, "Of course." After saying this, he rose into the air and flew towards the soul of the golden crow. Li Xiaoyan's heart was filled with complex emotions, and silently said, "Thank you," then suppressed all of his emotions, drew his bow, and aimed at the soul of the golden crow. Suddenly, that familiar mysterious feeling attacked her heart again. At first, when she drew the bow and pulled the arrow towards the soul of the golden crow, this feeling appeared in her heart. It was as if the heaven-shocking bow and sun-shooting arrow were different when facing the soul of the golden crow. When he aimed at the soul of the golden crow, this feeling became even stronger. Suddenly, her heart moved and she suddenly understood. I understand, these two divine weapons and the soul of the golden crow are old enemies. There is a kind of fate between them. When I aimed at the soul of the golden crow, the divine weapons also sensed it. She hurriedly activated Ho Yi's archery, and the sun-shooting arrow gradually turned golden. The golden light became more and more dazzling. However, this dazzling golden light did not last for long. The light suddenly dimmed and turned into another color. She was shocked and stared straight at the sun-shooting arrow. It had turned green, like a new sprout on a tree branch, shining with infinite vitality and vitality. Wooden arrow! Li Xiaotian immediately recognized it as if he had found a treasure. This was another change in Ho Yi's archery. Obviously, this was an additional effect caused by the connection with the soul of the golden crow. Li Xiaotian was wild with joy. He stared at the green wooden arrow with a thought. The wooden arrow turned into a golden arrow, and then back into a wooden arrow. She could change all of this as she pleased. Everyone's attention was attracted by Tang Zheng and the soul of the golden crow, and no one noticed the change in the sun-shooting arrow. Tang Zheng charged towards the soul of the golden crow without caring about his own safety, and used the sky-swallowing technique again. In the eyes of Mo Xie and the mocking eyes of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates, he was like a fool who was seeking death. They had already determined that Tang Zheng would definitely not be able to escape a second time, because they had already made the corresponding adjustments. Under Mo Xie's orders, the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates all occupied the area directly below Tang Zheng. Once he fell from the sky again, what greeted him would be the fatal attacks of countless treasures. Chapter 1341. Of course, Tang Zheng noticed the changes below, but he couldn't care less about it. He could only try his best to go up. However, with his previous experience, he didn't rush forward blindly. Instead, he moved left and right as if he was teasing the golden crow's soul. When Mo Xie saw his actions, she naturally couldn't allow him to continue showing off like this. After all, there were still a large number of people waiting below, waiting to hack him to death. Mo Xie's mind moved, and the golden crow's soul chased after Tang Zheng. With 8 golden crow souls, Tang Zheng couldn't split himself and couldn't dodge them all. Mighty Yang Qi fell from the top of his head. If it weren't for his profound skills and ample preparation, his pure yang energy would have been detonated by this yang qi. Tang Zheng was already forced into a corner by the 8 golden crow souls. He watched as they closed in, and his pure yang energy seemed like it could explode at any time. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng and the golden crow's soul attracted the attention of all the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. These people were complacent, thinking that they were determined to win and that Tang Zheng was definitely going to die. Suddenly, Tang Zheng glanced at Li Xiaotian and gave her a look. Li Xiaotian had been watching him. When she saw this look, she understood that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Thus, she gently loosened her fingers. The green shooting sun arrow turned into a green light and flew towards the golden crow's soul. Mo Xie was an expert after all. Although most of his attention was focused on Tang Zheng, he still noticed the shooting sun arrow at the critical moment. He knew that something was wrong, and his expression suddenly changed. His reaction was very fast. With a thought, the golden crow's soul scattered in all directions, trying to avoid the shooting sun arrow. He succeeded. This green shooting sun arrow missed and didn't hit the golden crow's soul at all. Xie sighed in relief and was about to mock him when suddenly, another green light appeared in front of a golden crow's soul. What's going on? Xie turned pale with fright, but it was already too late to dodge. However, he finally saw clearly what was going on. It turned out that a golden arrow and a wooden arrow were shot out at the same time. However, under the bright sunlight, the wooden arrow was particularly eye-catching and attracted everyone's attention. On the contrary, the traces of the golden arrow were completely covered. Li Xiaotian had fully demonstrated this point. Just as the golden arrow was about to hit one of the golden crow souls, it finally changed color and turned into an even more powerful wooden arrow. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the soul of the golden crow was struck by the wooden arrow and exploded. It turned into specks of light that scattered in all directions. No! Xie turned pale with fright as she screamed. Her face was ghastly pale to the extreme, and it was even mixed with indescribable rage. He never thought that a weak person like Li Xiaotian would be able to shoot the golden crow's soul right under his nose. This was a great humiliation. Immediately, he also understood that Tang Zheng's attack on the golden crow's soul was purposely to attract his attention and give Li Xiaotian an opportunity to attack. Damn it, I was actually played by them. Xie gritted her teeth, and her eyes looked as if they were about to spit out fire. But Li Xiaotian waved her fist, unable to hide her excitement. She had finally succeeded in shooting down a golden crow soul. To her, this was a great encouragement. Tang Zheng also couldn't hide his joy and gave Li Xiaotian an encouraging look. Their eyes met, and Li Xiaotian's heart warmed as a great sense of accomplishment overwhelmed his heart. There were only 7 golden crow's souls left in the sky. You think you can ruin my plan just like this? Wishful thinking. Xie was furious. Just as she finished speaking, the 9th golden crow's soul that was originally condensing gathered together and turned into a sun. Another 8 golden crow's souls hung in the air. When Tang Zheng and the others saw this, their hearts suddenly sank. They had worked hard for half a day, but they didn't think that they would actually succeed. Moreover, at a speed visible to the naked eye, the golden crow's souls that had just exploded slowly rose into the air and gathered together again. I definitely can't let you succeed, Tang Zheng shouted, and rushed toward the golden crow's souls that were slowly condensing. He couldn't deal with a complete golden crow's soul, but he should have a way to deal with these stragglers. This thought flashed through his mind like a bolt of lightning, and he seemed to wake up from a dream. Why was he so stupid that he didn't think of this method? He hurriedly used the sky-swallowing technique, and the huge black hole produced a terrifying suction force. The complete golden crow's soul resisted this suction force, and the scattered light spots were not that powerful and were all sucked in. Whoosh whoosh. The air mixed with the light spots were sucked into the black hole. Everyone saw this scene. Silence reigned. He actually sucked the golden crow's soul into the black hole. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates all looked as if they had seen a ghost, and their eyes were wide open in disbelief. Even Xie was so shocked that he couldn't speak. How is this possible? How can he suck the golden crow's soul away? How can I gather the 9th golden crow's soul like this? Xie muttered to himself as if he had lost his soul. It was no wonder that he had such a big reaction. This scene was just too shocking, and the consequences were too great. Xie wholeheartedly wanted to gather the 9th golden crow's soul and revive the Yellow Emperor, but now that there was 1 golden crow's soul missing, how could he do it? There was nothing he could do. Despair spread from the bottom of his heart, and anger accompanied it. It was not an exaggeration to say that his mood was overflowing with anger. He stared at Tang Zheng, who was still absorbing the golden crow's soul, and let out a hysterical roar. Tang Zheng, I'm going to kill you. After saying this, he charged towards Tang Zheng with a powerful force. After Tang Zheng discovered the huge effect of the sky-swallowing technique, he immediately activated his skill and continuously absorbed the scattered golden crow's soul. Not long after, the scattered golden crow's soul was completely sucked into the black hole. Immediately, he was overjoyed. As long as there was no 9th golden crow's soul, this world would be able to avoid destruction. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally settled down. Looking at Mo Xie, who was crazily charging towards him, Tang Zheng could not retreat in time. This was because the other 8 Golden Crow's souls had completely blocked his path of retreat. Kill! His eyes became resolute as he charged towards Mo Xie without a care for his own safety. The Empyrean fairy also caught up. She was very clear about the difference between Tang Zheng and Mo Xie. Tang Zheng was definitely not Mo Xie's opponent. The stately painting shone brightly as it released its strongest attack. The Empyrean fairy also gave it her all. In order to save Tang Zheng, she gave it her all. Li Xiaotian did not help Tang Zheng because she knew that if she rushed up, she would not be able to help at all. She had more important things to do. Compared to other girls, Li Xiaotian's most obvious trait was her rationality. Although she did not recover her memories, she was gradually regaining her rationality. It was precisely because of her rationality that she understood her responsibilities and advantages. She had to shoot down as many Golden Crow's souls as possible. This was the only thing that could alleviate the current situation. Therefore, she did not hesitate to draw her bow and arrow and aimed at another Golden Crow's soul. Mo Xie's mind was covered by anger and had no time to care about the Golden Crow's soul. Therefore, when this sun-shooting arrow, which had concealed its tracks, flew in front of the Golden Crow's soul, the Golden Crow's soul was indifferent. Boom! There was another explosion. This time, the Golden Crow's soul exploded again. There were only 7 suns left in the sky. The explosion made the hearts of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates tremble. Seeing the Golden Crow's soul scatter into spots of light, they were all grief-stricken. This time, there was no hope of reviving the Yellow Emperor. What should they do? No one knew the answer. Mo Xie also did not know the answer. The anger in his heart burned even more fiercely, as if it could burn everything. He ignored the stately painting's attack behind him and only had eyes for Tang Zheng. He was determined to kill him. Tang Zheng knew that he was not Mo Xie's opponent, so he simply used the sky-swallowing technique to absorb the scattered spots of light after the explosion. Just as he finished absorbing the exploding Golden Crow's soul, Mo Xie's attack arrived in front of him. In the face of such a violent attack, he could not block it at all. Pooh! His indestructible body only blocked the Ganjiang sword slightly. Then, the Ganjiang sword pierced through his chest like a hot knife through butter. The Ganjiang sword cut through his muscles and pierced through his heart, directly piercing through Qiyu's heart. Tang Zheng trembled violently and subconsciously put down his hands that were controlling the black hole. However, the black hole did not disappear. Instead, it floated in midair. He could clearly feel the situation in his body. After Qiyu's heart was pierced, the last remaining bit of Qiyu's blood flowed out and flowed into his 8 extraordinary meridians. However, this did not stop the terrible injuries. He felt his life force slowly leaving his body. A bitter smile appeared on his face. The chaotic Vajra spell had helped him cultivate to the indestructible body, but what was the use? The difference in cultivation between him and Mo Xie was like heaven and earth, so even the chaotic Vajra spell was unable to make up for the difference. Moreover, Mo Xie had used all of his killing moves this time and had completely locked onto him. He had no way of dodging at all. Looking at the furious Mo Xie who was right in front of him, Tang Zheng moved his lips and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He said weakly, "Mo Xie, you have failed. If you are unable to condense 9 Golden Crow's souls, you will not be able to revive your master. This world will also avoid destruction." "Do you know what you are doing?" Mo Xie asked hysterically. "Of course I know. I am saving the world, saving the people I care about, my friends, my family, my lover." Tang Zheng's voice became weaker and weaker. He felt as if his body was no longer his own. He had never felt this way before. Was this the feeling of death? I didn't die from the explosion of pure yang energy, but in the end, I died under Mo Xie's Ganjiang sword. Tang Zheng thought bitterly. He tried his best to open his eyes wide, as if he wanted to see the world again. He wanted to see the people he cared about again. He saw the Empyrean fairy attacking with all her might, saw Li Xiaotian pulling the bowstring again, saw the 4 symbols venerable, the Thundercloud Beast, and the Scarlet Moon Beast fighting with the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Chapter 1342. This sword had pierced through Tang Zheng's body and heart, quickly taking his life away. The wind seemed to have stopped, and so did the sounds of battle. The entire world had become silent. His gaze was resolute. He did not regret any of this. If he was given another chance, he would still do the same thing without hesitation, even if it meant sacrificing himself. The Empyrean maiden saw this scene, Li Xiaotian saw this scene, and all the other people and beasts saw this scene. They were all shocked. In the eyes of Empyrean Fairy and the others, Tang Zheng was always able to turn danger into safety, as if he would never die. It turned out that it was all just their misconception. Everyone could die. Tang Zheng was no exception. Seeing his life force rapidly draining away, everyone was furious. The Empyrean Fairy stopped activating the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and Vale. Li Xiaotian put down his bow and arrow. The four symbols Venerable, the Red Lunar Beast, and the Thundercloud Beast rushed toward him at the same time as if they had gone mad. They completely ignored the enemies in front of them. Tang Zheng! Waves of heart-wrenching cries rang out, even more shocking than the claps of thunder from the 9 heavens. Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian flew to Tang Zheng's side at the same time. Mo Xie did not stop them, and he had already pulled out his Ganjiang sword. Blood spurted out from the wound, and then, like a small stream, the blood flowed out of the wound. Empyrean Fairy was the first to hug her, saying anxiously, "You won't die, you must hold on." Li Xiaotian stood guard at the side, nodding his head like he was pounding garlic. "Yes, you've created so many miracles and experienced so many dangers, yet you're still safe and sound. You definitely won't die." Her voice was already choked with sobs. Obviously, her emotions were fluctuating greatly. He's dead for sure. He's not that lucky to survive my sword strike. Mo Xie saw this scene and said happily. The Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian both turned their heads and glared fiercely at Mo Xie. They wanted nothing more than to stab him with their swords. Mo Xie was not afraid at all. Instead, she raised her head. Her provocation was self-evident. Tang Zheng smoothly held their hands. Their delicate jade hands were more delicate than the most precious porcelain in the world, causing one's heart to sway. His heart did not waver. Instead, he forced himself to open his eyes and smiled weakly. "I'm afraid I won't die so easily." "Won't die so easily?" Everyone else was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. Even Mo Xie looked as if she had seen a ghost and shouted, "Impossible!" What was his Ganjiang sword? That was a saint artifact with an artifact spirit. That sword had completely pierced through Tang Zheng's heart. If he still hadn't died, then his life force was too tenacious. Tang Zheng was indeed at the end of his rope, but his life force was not completely cut off. Not to mention that his cultivation level had already reached the divine transformation realm, his life force was very tenacious to begin with. Just the chaotic Vajra spell alone had greatly increased his life force. The indestructible body was not called for nothing. Although his body had been pierced through, it would not be easy to take his life. Most importantly, he still had the life-saving treasure, the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill. The 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill had fused with the sap of the Tree of Life. It had the miraculous effect of reviving the dead and regenerating flesh and bones. Right now, his life force was severely depleted, which gave the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Pill a chance to display its miraculous effects. "You won't die." Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian looked at him in a daze. They were both surprised and happy. With such serious injuries, they thought that he would definitely die, but they didn't expect him to be so optimistic. "Of course, cough, cough, I won't die." Tang Zheng coughed violently, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. This caused everyone's hearts to tighten again. Mo Xie was already sure that Tang Zheng still had a way to save his life. Furious, he took out his Ganjiang sword and tried to add another strike. How could the Empyrean Fairy turn a blind eye? She made a prompt decision and brought out the mountain river map to meet Mo Xie. Li Xiaotian supported him and said with concern, "Then hurry up and heal your wounds." Don't talk anymore. Tang Jing didn't dare let his guard down. With a thought, a 9 revolutions soul return pill flew out from Sumru world. He swallowed it in one gulp and the 9 revolutions soul return pill turned into a warm current. A powerful life force quickly flowed through his limbs, bones, and 8 extraordinary meridians. Spring came upon a withered tree, like a long drought met with a sweet rain. Tang Zheng's wounds stopped bleeding and scabbed over at a visible speed. His pale cheeks also regained some color. Within his body, invisible to the naked eye, the torn wound on Qi Yu's heart was rapidly healing. Qi Yu's blood had already flowed out completely and merged with Tang Zheng's blood. A powerful energy was hidden within. At this moment, the 9 revolutions soul return pill awakened this energy. In an instant, Tang Zheng was like a balloon, rapidly expanding and widening his meridians. His 9 main meridians were actually gradually closing in on each other and converging together. Tang Zheng couldn't help but let out a light snort. His eyes were also glowing with vitality. Although he was still very weak, at least his life was no longer in danger. Li Xiaotian was pleasantly surprised. He couldn't help but clench his hand and say, "The 9 revolutions soul return pill is indeed miraculous. Don't just focus on me. Hurry up and take this opportunity to shoot down the Golden Crow's soul," Tang Jing urged. This was the most important matter at hand. Li Xiaotian also understood this point. He hurriedly gathered his thoughts and stood up with his head held high. He drew his bow and aimed at a Golden Crow's soul. Swoosh! The sun-shooting arrow tore through the air. Boom! With a shocking explosion, another Golden Crow's soul turned into specks of light. There were only 6 Golden Crow's souls left in the sky. The black hole that had been suspended in midair didn't disappear. The scattered specks of light were immediately sucked in by a huge attractive force. At this point, Tang Jing had absorbed 3 Golden Crow's souls. Everyone's spirit was greatly shaken. Not only did Tang Jing not die, but he also found a way to restrain the Golden Crow's soul. It could be said that good things came in pairs. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates were extremely angry. Mo Xie loudly shouted, "Stop them!" Mo Xie already understood that he didn't kill Tang Jing. This brat's life was really too strong. However, the most important thing right now was to stop them from attacking the Golden Crow's soul. Mo Xie multitasked. When another sun-shooting arrow came, he finally controlled the Golden Crow's soul and dodged the attack. When Li Xiaotian realized that his attack had missed, he couldn't help but feel gloomy. It seemed that his subsequent attacks wouldn't be so easy. As expected, in order to protect the Golden Crow's soul, Mo Xie placed most of his attention on the Golden Crow's soul. He didn't even want to fight the Empyrean fairy head-on. The two of them had similar cultivation. When one of them chose not to fight head-on and kept retreating, the Empyrean fairy felt very helpless. The other Yellow Emperor's former subordinates attacked Tang Jing madly. However, they were stopped by the 4 divine beasts, the Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Lunar Beast. The Yellow Emperor's former subordinates had many people and were powerful. They forced the 4 divine beasts and the others to retreat step by step. However, they were still bitterly holding on, not letting the enemy attack the weakened Tang Jing. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the sky. This person's speed didn't seem fast, but it was actually extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived at the peak of Sky Mountain. He stood in the air, looked at the 6 souls of the Golden Crow in the sky, and then looked at the great battle on the ground. He instantly guessed most of what had happened. Tang Zheng and the others had actually stopped Mo Xie and shot down the 3 souls of the Golden Crow. Without a doubt, this was a great victory, but also a difficult victory. Qi Yu was indeed an expert, but it would not be easy for him to shoot down the Golden Crow's souls so quickly. Of course, Qi Yu knew that this was definitely the effect of the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows. These 2 divine weapons were the sworn enemies of the Golden Crow's soul. They were the best at restraining the Golden Crow's soul. When he saw Li Xiaotian pulling the bow and arrow, he clicked his tongue in wonder. This time, she was actually so proficient in using the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows. Although he and Tang Zheng were mortal enemies, at this moment, If he wanted to resolve this crisis and stop the plans of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates, he had to cooperate with Tang Zheng and the others. Otherwise, it would not be easy for him to completely shoot down the soul of the Golden Crow by himself. When he saw Tang Zheng suck the last bit of light from the Golden Crow's soul into the black hole, he immediately understood Tang Zheng's intentions. This way, he could solve the problem of the Golden Crow's soul once and for all. Genius, you actually thought of this method. Although they were enemies, Qiyu still couldn't help but praise them in his heart. Qiyu's gaze turned and fixed on Mo Xie, and said coldly, Mo Xie, we meet again. Last time, you ambushed me. This time, let's see what kind of waves you can stir up. Last time, Mo Xie was able to ambush Qiyu and even killed the Saint King, causing Qiyu to suffer heavy losses. This time, of course, he would take revenge. Mo Xie had already seen Qiyu quickly flying over, and his heart couldn't help but thump. He was already barely able to deal with Li Xiaotian, but with Qiyu, even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he definitely wouldn't be a match for them. Hearing Qiyu's words, Mo Xie already understood the hatred in Qiyu's heart. He repelled the Empyrean fairy with one move and retreated, increasing the distance between him and the Empyrean fairy. It was precisely because of this distraction that one of the Golden Crow's souls temporarily escaped his control and was hit by the shooting sun arrow, turning into countless specks of light. Li Xiaotian's eyes lit up, and he secretly cheered. Haha, your Golden Crow's souls are about to all perish and completely disappear from this world. Qiyu laughed heartily. Mo Xie's heart was bleeding, his goal was getting more and more out of reach, causing his fighting spirit to be greatly affected. The black hole once again showed its might, crazily absorbing the Golden Crow's souls, and not long later, all of the Golden Crow's souls were completely sucked into the black hole. Qiyu personally witnessed the entire process, and his heart became more and more shocked. The power of the sky-devouring technique was truly beyond his expectations. The sky-devouring technique is a technique passed down since ancient times, and it has always been regarded as useless. I also thought so at that time, and didn't pay attention to it at all. This is really a huge loss. That brat's sky-devouring technique was an incomplete version found in Langya, which is why it can be completed. How did my witch tribe's divine ability fall into the hands of the dragon tribe's Langya? There must be some secrets that I don't know. Of course, if I can get the completed version of the sky-devouring technique, maybe it can be even more powerful in my hands. Chapter 1343. Tang Zheng naturally did not know that Qiyu was actually thinking about the sky-devouring technique. All his attention was focused on the black hole. Although he was still very weak, it did not affect his control of the black hole. The sky-devouring technique had evolved to a very powerful realm. Once the black hole was activated, Tang Zheng did not need to worry about maintaining it at all times. Therefore, although the black hole was working, it did not consume much energy and did not need to worry about it. When the 4 souls of the Golden Crow were completely sucked into the black hole, a strange sound appeared in Tang Zheng's body. A familiar feeling arose spontaneously. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. Last time, he had absorbed the aura of the wilderness so that the world would not become a wilderness. In the end, for some reason, the aura of the wilderness that was sucked into the black hole ran into his body. It seemed that the black hole had the ability to refine energy. When the black hole absorbed an extremely powerful energy, the energy would not disappear into thin air. Instead, it would fuse into his body. After that, he had racked his brains, but he could not figure out why. He subconsciously thought that this was only useful for the aura of the wilderness. Therefore, when he used the sky-devouring technique to absorb the souls of the Golden Crow, he did not think too much about it. But now, he suddenly realized that his idea was too simple. Not only could the sky-devouring technique absorb the aura of the wilderness, but even the scattered souls of the Golden Crow were no exception. It seemed that these souls of the Golden Crow would also fuse into his body. That strange sound seemed to be the switch that opened the curtains to all of this. Boom! Vast and mighty energy appeared out of thin air and appeared in Tang Zheng's body. Tang Zheng was startled and his expression changed drastically. This energy was indeed very powerful, but this was the soul of the golden crow. There was no need to explain how abundant the yang energy contained in it was. Tang Zheng's face turned pale. The pure yang energy was immediately detonated. The soul of the golden crow was the fuse. It completely detonated Tang Zheng's pure yang energy. His facial muscles immediately twisted together. It was extremely terrifying and painful. He screamed at the top of his lungs, frightening the others. Everyone thought that Tang Zheng had already passed the critical period and was safe and sound, but this scream showed that they were too naive. Tang Zheng did not survive the danger. On the contrary, the problem he faced was even more serious. Li Xiaotian's attention was immediately drawn over. He turned his head to look at him and wanted to rush back without a care for his own safety. "Don't!" Tang Zheng quickly waved his hand to stop her. "Destroy all the golden crow souls." Li Xiaotian stopped in her tracks. She had a conflicted expression on her face. She was worried about Tang Zheng, but at the same time, she understood that she had a great responsibility. Only the divine weapon in her hand could shoot down the soul of the golden crow. Tang Zheng suddenly turned his head and stared straight at Qiyu. He said, "Qiyu, the remaining souls of the golden crow must be destroyed as well. You know what I mean?" Qiyu obviously knew what he meant. He nodded lightly. "Your pure yang energy has already been activated. Can you still hold on?" Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and said, "This is my problem. You only need to restrain Mo Xie and let Li Xiaotian successfully shoot down the other souls of the golden crow." Qiyu said indifferently, "Brat, although you are my enemy, we still have a period of time together. Since you are willing to sacrifice yourself to destroy the souls of the golden crow, this point coincides with mine. I have disliked these souls of the golden crow since tens of thousands of years ago. They were nurtured by the Yellow Emperor's soul. If we destroy the souls of the golden crow, then the Yellow Emperor will never be able to revive." "Ha!" Mo Xie heard this and flew into a rage. He roared, "Tang Zheng, do you know what you are doing? If Master does not revive, then Qiyu will unify the world. Can you bear this responsibility?" Even with the pressure of righteousness, Tang Zheng was not overwhelmed. Instead, he stood up resolutely. He resisted the pure yang energy while saying, "I don't know so many principles. I only know that the soul of the golden crow will destroy this world and cause most people to die. I won't watch this happen, and that's enough." "You are short-sighted. Although there will be a certain sacrifice, Master will definitely lead humanity to greater glory." Mo Xie corrected him righteously. "I don't want this kind of glory." Tang Zheng's answer was resolute and decisive. He did not hesitate at all. "Why are you talking so much nonsense with Mo Xie? He has already been brainwashed by the Yellow Emperor. He thinks that he is the only wise master in the world and that everyone else is worthless." Qiyu said jokingly. Tang Zheng did not say one more thing. He still had the inner demons as a secret weapon. If Qiyu really did go against the flow, then he naturally had the inner demons to deal with him. Moreover, his strength was not static. One day, his cultivation would catch up to Qiyu and even surpass him. At that time, he would not have the chance to jump around even if he wanted to. The harmful effects of the soul of the golden crow were obvious, and right now, Tang Zheng would naturally choose to solve this problem first. "You will regret it." Mo Xie gnashed his teeth and roared hysterically. Tang Zheng quietly replied, "I will not regret it." "Mo Xie, you have already said enough nonsense. Now, there is no need for you to say any more." Qiyu mocked as his figure flashed and attacked Mo Xie. Mo Xie hurriedly used his Ganjiang sword to meet the enemy. Empyrean Fairy looked deeply at Qiyu and automatically took a few steps back. She had already seen through Qiyu's intentions. Qiyu's cultivation had already far surpassed hers and Mo Xie's. If he wanted to deal with Mo Xie, it would not be difficult at all. Empyrean Fairy had expended too much energy in the previous battle. At this time, she needed to conserve her energy and recover her strength. This was to prevent Qiyu from turning his attention to them after dealing with Mo Xie. Empyrean Fairy was very meticulous and cleverly thought of this point. Qiyu did not mind. In his eyes, he could deal with Emocia even without Empyrean Fairy's help. Empyrean Fairy retreated to Tang Zheng's side and a cool wave of pure Yin energy spread through the air toward Tang Zheng. Pure Yin energy could be emitted from a person's body, but it was very weak. However, Empyrean Fairy had the 9 Yin Saint body and contained too much pure Yin energy. Therefore, when she approached Tang Zheng was like a person who was about to die of thirst and finally saw a clear spring. His eyes lit up and he greedily absorbed the pure Yin energy. Empyrean Fairy also felt the change in the pure Yin energy in her body. She looked at Tang Zheng and understood everything. She was very clear about the danger that Tang Zheng was facing. If she did not help him, she was afraid that he would eventually explode and die. Li Xiaotian took the initiative to kiss her in front of everyone. This kind of feat was too difficult for Empyrean Fairy. Although she had done it before, it was in a deserted place after all. She did not do the same thing. Instead, she held Tang Zheng's hand and the pure Yin energy rushed into Tang Zheng's body like a river. Tang Zheng was shocked and stared at Empyrean Fairy. "Restrain the pure Yang energy and save your life," Empyrean Fairy said expressionlessly. Tang Zheng nodded his head gratefully and hurriedly absorbed the pure Yin energy. Although he was only absorbing the pure Yin energy from her hand, which was not as fast as intimate contact, but after all, the 9 Heavenly Maiden had the 9 Yin Saint body. With enough pure Yin energy, she could help Tang Zheng solve his urgent problem. The pure Yang energy in his heart gradually calmed down, alleviating his pain. Boom! Suddenly, another golden crow soul was hit by the shooting sun arrow and exploded into pieces. Whoosh whoosh! The black hole sucked in many light spots of the golden crow souls. The pure Yang energy that had just calmed down was immediately affected and became restless, as if it was about to break free of control. Empyrean Fairy was shocked and her eyes widened. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. Before the golden crow souls were completely dealt with, the pure Yin energy that he absorbed from Empyrean Fairy was like a drop in the bucket. It could not completely change the situation. The 5 souls of the golden crow were all absorbed by the sky-swallowing skill. This energy was majestically integrated into Tang Zheng's body. He could not help but let out a heart-wrenching scream again. "Tang Zheng, how are you?" Empyrean Fairy asked anxiously. Tang Zheng was tortured by the pure Yang energy and did not have time to answer Empyrean Fairy. The veins on his forehead were bulging and he was sweating profusely. Obviously, the pure Yin energy that he absorbed from Empyrean Fairy was not enough to change the situation. He had to absorb more pure Yin energy to suppress the pure Yang energy. Tang Zheng and Empyrean Fairy understood this very well. Tang Zheng was silent and only gritted his teeth to hold on. However, the situation was getting worse. Empyrean Fairy was also biting her lips and struggling in her heart. She had a way to give Tang Zheng more pure Yin energy, but it required more intimate contact. Under the watchful eyes of everyone and in broad daylight, her thoughts were very nutritious. Furthermore, they were from ancient times. One could imagine how big of a problem this was. However, she could only watch as Tang Zheng was in more and more pain. Especially when another golden crow soul exploded and Tang Zheng absorbed all of the golden crow souls. The pain became even more torturous and almost unbearable. If Li Xiaotian can do it, why can't I? This is a critical moment of life and death. How can I still have such absurd thoughts? Empyrean Fairy silently criticized herself. Finally, she gritted her teeth and hugged Tang Zheng. Her cherry lips immediately moved forward. Their mouths were tightly pressed together. A refreshing feeling spread from his mouth to his entire body, refreshing his mind. He looked at the Empyrean maiden in shock with what was left of his rationality. She had actually taken the initiative to kiss him in order to save him. This sacrifice was not small. Empyrean Fairy pretended to be calm and looked at Tang Zheng without changing her expression. Instead, she was silently encouraging him. Tang Zheng understood the look in her eyes. Since she had sacrificed so much, he could not let her good intentions down. Therefore, he did not hesitate to absorb the pure Yin energy. The last time, the 9 Heavens Maidens saved Tang Zheng was when he was unconscious. This time, their eyes met, and they looked at each other with a clear and fresh gaze. The atmosphere was completely different, causing complicated thoughts to surge in Empyrean Fairy's mind. Tang Zheng was still absorbing the pure yin energy, but before he could restrain the pure yang energy, he heard two more bangs. Two more golden crow souls were hit. The spots of light were like a gust of wind that was sucked into the black hole. Chapter 1344. The two exploding souls of the golden crow quickly flew towards the black hole. The black hole seemed to have tasted the sweetness as it frantically absorbed the souls of the golden crow. This caused Tang Zheng to suffer. His body was completely filled with agitated pure yang energy. The Empyrean Fairy's pure yin energy was simply a drop in the bucket. Looking at Tang Zheng's conflicted and painful appearance, the Empyrean Fairy also understood this point. Her heart trembled as she revealed a difficult expression. This level of intimate contact was simply not enough to replenish enough pure yin energy. Tang Zheng was facing great danger unless she could change to a more intimate method. Of course, she knew what kind of method it was. She had occasionally heard Tang Zheng communicate with other girls in this way. Just listening to it made her feel unbearably shy. After all, most of her thinking was still the model of the ancient people. The 3 obediences and 4 virtues were deeply ingrained in people's minds and were not easy to change. If she had more intimate contact with Tang Zheng, she really could not imagine what kind of scene it would be. Just thinking about it made her feel weak and shy all over. Although the Empyrean Fairy was powerful, she was still a girl in the end. She had many of a girl's natural instincts. Tang Zheng could not help but cry out. The intense pain almost engulfed his nerves. The pure yang energy this time was more violent than any previous time. It seemed like it was really going to end his life. Bang! Tang Zheng knelt on the ground with one knee. The stones on the ground were heavily smashed by his knee and shattered into pieces. Tang Zheng! The Empyrean Fairy involuntarily separated from him and subconsciously shouted. Stop! Stop absorbing the soul of the golden crow. Otherwise, you will definitely die. The Empyrean Fairy's persuasion did not work. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and shook his head with difficulty. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. No, I must finish absorbing the soul of the golden crow. I can't let it remain in this world. His attitude was firm. The Empyrean Fairy could tell from his tone and eyes. She subconsciously raised her head and saw the black hole in midair, frantically absorbing the soul of the golden crow. She wanted to destroy the black hole, but she immediately dismissed the idea. She had seen the miraculous power of the sky-swallowing technique too many times, and she knew very well that she might not be able to destroy the black hole. Moreover, this was Tang Zheng's wish. If he destroyed the black hole, what if he suffered a backlash? Do I really have to give myself to him? The Empyrean Fairy thought in a daze. She was extremely conflicted. Boom! The 8th golden crow's soul was hit by the shooting sun arrow and exploded into light fragments. Ah no! Mo Xie's heart-wrenching cry resounded through the clouds, but he was powerless to protect himself, so how could he care about the golden crow's soul? There was only one golden crow left. If it was shot down again, then Mo Xie would have no hope at all. Seeing Li Xiaotian draw his bow and aim at the golden crow's soul, Mo Xie's heart was resolute. He hysterically shouted, "Don't even think about hurting it." Mo Xie multitasked, controlling the golden crow's soul and dodging the shooting sun arrow's attack. Bang! However, multitasking had serious consequences. Qi was already closing in on him step by step and was surrounded by danger. His distraction immediately allowed Qi to seize the opportunity. The battle spirit sword pierced through the air with a brilliant heavenly might. Mo Xie was completely unable to block it and had nowhere to hide. Clang! The two swords clashed. The Ganjiang sword bounced back and fiercely hit Mo Xie's chest, letting out a dull sound. Mo Xie was sent flying backwards. Before Mo Xie could stabilize his body, he heard a small cracking sound. His heart trembled as he quickly stared at the Ganjiang sword. A crack appeared on the sword's body. It was clearly the place where the battle soul sword had clashed. The Ganjiang sword and the Battle Soul sword were both saint weapons. They both had sword souls, but in different hands, they would release different powers. The Battle Soul sword was clearly stronger and actually damaged the Ganjiang sword. His beloved sword being damaged, Mo Xie felt as if he had been struck by lightning. With a piu sound, his body leaned forward and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face became dispirited. The Ganjiang sword was actually damaged. He muttered to himself as if he was possessed. Ever since the Ganjiang sword was refined, it had accompanied him for countless years. In hundreds and thousands of battles, the Ganjiang sword had always helped him. It was like a part of his life. But this time, the Ganjiang sword was damaged. It was as if a part of his life was damaged. One could imagine how he felt. Suddenly, he felt something and raised his head. His gaze shifted from the Ganjiang sword to the sky. The remaining Golden Crow's soul was still emitting light and heat. However, a green shooting sun arrow approached it. He shouted and tried to control the Golden Crow's soul to dodge, but Chiyu had already arrived in front of him and raised the Battle Soul sword. The Battle Soul sword fell, bringing along a sharp sword chi that filled the sky, completely locking onto Mo Xie. This was the threat of death, as if the god of death was summoning him. He finally couldn't care less about controlling the Golden Crow's soul. Taking a deep breath, he used all his strength to raise the Ganjiang sword. The Ganjiang sword was raised, bringing along a blood-red light that dyed half the sky red as it faced the Battle Soul sword. Boom! With an explosion, the Golden Crow's soul was struck and turned into specks of light that filled the sky. At this point, the 9 Golden Crow's souls were completely shot down. The sky suddenly darkened and turned from day to night. The air was no longer dry and hot. The heaven and earth were no longer a huge furnace. The 9 insufferably arrogant Golden Crow's souls were completely reduced to history. Especially when all the specks of light disappeared into the black hole, the Golden Crow's soul had completely disappeared from the stage of history. When the black hole disappeared, Tang Jing tumbled and fiercely fell to the ground. Without enough pure yin energy to balance it, he had no way to restrain the restless pure yang energy in his body. However, he was very happy to finally see the Golden Crow's soul completely disappear. This meant that the apocalyptic crisis had temporarily disappeared and he had succeeded. Tang Zheng, the Empyrean maiden, was startled and hurriedly supported him. The pure yin energy from the skin contact was like a drop in the bucket. Although it gradually seeped into Tang Zheng's body through the skin, it was not enough to change the situation. With great difficulty, Tang Jing squeezed his eyes into slits. Like a child, he innocently said from the bottom of his heart, "I succeeded." The Empyrean fairy's heart felt as if it had been fiercely struck. In her life, she had seen too many ambitious and ruthless people. However, she had never seen anyone who was willing to sacrifice their life for countless unrelated people. Tang Zheng was the first person to do so. The impact in the depths of her heart was not small. Her eyes were almost blurred as she stared straight at him. At this moment, Tang Zheng's image was incomparably great. It was as if he could support the heavens and earth. No one could compare to him. Qi Yu and Mo Xie's cultivation were higher than his, but so what? In the Empyrean fairy's heart, these two people were more concerned about themselves and their own power. However, neither of them thought about those unrelated people. Those people were like ants that could not even cause a ripple in their hearts. Boom! A ball of flame jumped out from Tang Zheng's body. With a touch of his clothes, Tang Zheng began to burn fiercely. This was the sign of the pure yang energy completely erupting. The flames grew bigger and bigger. Not long later, Tang Zheng became naked, completely exposed in front of the Empyrean fairy. The raging flames were unable to harm the Empyrean fairy. She stared straight at him, completely at a loss. His physique was very strong, with well-defined pecs and 8-pack abs. His Apollo's belt was clearly visible. Her gaze could not help but move downwards. She glanced at him and immediately retracted her gaze. Her heart was palpitating, as if her heart was beating wildly. She could even hear her own violent heartbeat. Her breathing could not help but become hurried. From ancient times until now, she had never been like this. Of course, she understood the reason behind it. However, she was unable to make up her mind. Emosia was forced into a corner by Chiyu. When the Ganjiang sword and War Spirit sword collided once again, the powerful force destroyed everything. His fingers loosened and the Ganjiang sword flew out of his hand. "Come back!" he shouted loudly, trying to summon the Ganjiang sword back. Unfortunately, the Ganjiang sword did not respond at all. Kacha! Another crisp cracking sound caused Emosia's heart to instantly fall into the abyss of despair. He watched helplessly as the Ganjiang sword split into two into four, and finally into countless fragments that scattered in the air. The Ganjiang sword was completely destroyed. A peerlessly powerful sacred artifact had ended its life just like that. Even the sword spirit was no exception. It was torn into pieces by War Spirit sword's powerful sword chi, destroying the Ganjiang sword from its foundation. Large amounts of blood spurted out from Emosia's mouth. His expression was lifeless, as if he had become a fool. He had truly suffered too much of a blow. The soul of the Golden Crow and the Ganjiang sword had been destroyed together. His life had practically reached a dead end. Suddenly he saw Tang Jing burning in flames. His despair immediately turned incomparably malevolent as he shouted hysterically, "Tang Jing, all of this was caused by you. Now you have reaped what you sowed. With the eruption of pure yang energy, you will undoubtedly die." Chiyu also turned his head and stared at Tang Jing in a daze, as if he was reminiscing about his past self. He also had the 9 yang saint body, but since he was young, his strength was strong. Who knows how many women took the initiative to throw themselves at him, so before the age of 20, he had enough pure yin energy to balance his pure yang energy. When he was 20, he used a great divine ability and a great opportunity to walk out of the shadow of his death from the explosion of his body. From then on, the pure yang energy in his body had reached a peaceful state. There was no need to worry about this point. He had so many resources by his side but wasted them all. He deserved it. It's just a pity that such a good body was wasted. Chiyu shook his head and sighed. Chiyu had occupied Song Yu's body. This body naturally could not be compared to the 9 yang saint body. However, Chiyu was an expert after all. He used other aspects to gradually make up for this flaw. Of course, this took him a lot of effort and wasted a lot of time. Tang Jing struggled in the flames. Although the Empyrean fairy exploded him, she was helpless. It was as if he had truly reached the end of his life. Chapter 1345. The Empyrean fairy hugged Tang Jing as she struggled internally. It was not as easy as the previous battle. "What's wrong with him?" Li Xiaotian rushed over and anxiously asked. She finally gathered her energy and used the shooting sun arrows to shoot down all the Golden Crow, turning the earth into night once again. Although it was night, the flames on Tang Jing's body illuminated the peak of Heavenly Mountain, allowing them to see everything clearly. His pure yang energy has erupted. I'm afraid he won't live for long. The Empyrean fairy hesitantly said. What? He won't live for long. Then what do we do? Li Xiaotian was shocked. Draw a large amount of pure yin energy into your body and balance it with pure yang energy. Apart from this, there's no other way. The Empyrean fairy explained. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Xiaotian walked towards Tang Jing step by step, like a brave warrior. She naturally understood the meaning behind the Empyrean fairy's words. She had to have a relationship with him in order to have enough pure yin energy to balance the pure yang energy. This way, he would be able to escape this calamity. What are you going to do? The Empyrean fairy stared at her as she asked in shock. Li Xiaotian's expression did not change as she said, Of course I'm going to save him. You want to save him? The Empyrean fairy was shocked by Li Xiaotian's decisiveness. She did not hesitate at all as she happily made this decision. This made the Empyrean fairy feel a bit ashamed. He can't die. He is a hero. A hero should not die. Li Xiaotian said. The Empyrean fairy hesitated for a moment before hesitantly saying, But you're sacrificing too much. Li Xiaotian's lips hooked up in a beautiful arc. Her charm was imperceptibly displayed, causing people's hearts to flutter. Not only men, but even the Empyrean fairy felt that Li Xiaoan was incredibly moving. Sacrifice? Is this a sacrifice? This kind of hero who knows how many women in the world would fall for him. I'm the one who took advantage of him. Cheap. The Empyrean fairy found it hard to understand what she was thinking, but she was also deeply shocked by her words. Do you know the relationship between him and the women in the family? Are you still willing to be one of them? Asked the Empyrean fairy. What's wrong with that? If this is not a good thing, why do those people want to keep him away from me and take him for themselves? After hearing Li Xiaotian's question, the Empyrean fairy was speechless. Those people like him in the open and in the dark. They are inextricably linked to him. Even Mu Hongyan is no exception. Li Xiaotian said as she walked to Tang Zheng's side. The raging flames did not stop her at all. What Mu Hongyan? The Empyrean fairy cried out involuntarily. Why is she with Tang Zheng? Hee, what's there to be surprised about? Outstanding men have always attracted countless women. How did you find out? Li Xiaotian did not answer. Under the same roof, no matter how well it was hidden, there would still be clues. Li Xiaotian's mind was far better than others. She was very observant, so naturally, she did not notice anything fishy. She was not surprised and chose to keep Tang Zheng's secret. The two people involved thought that their plan was flawless, but they did not know that Li Xiaotian had already discovered it. Li Xiaotian raised her foot and stepped into the flames, ignoring them. The flames immediately ignited her clothes. She did not scream. This flame was very different from ordinary flames. It was an effect produced by the release of pure yang energy. After he stepped into the flames, he was completely enveloped by the flames. The Empyrean fairy subconsciously took a few steps back, distancing herself from the flames. The flames were too dazzling. It was like a fiery red curtain, blocking Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian. From the outside, it was impossible to see the situation inside. The Empyrean fairy's expression kept changing. She stared at the flames without blinking. Of course, she knew what was happening inside. She had a strange feeling in her heart. Why can she do it without hesitation, but I can't? Tang Zheng is very outstanding. Other than my father, he is more outstanding than any man I have ever met. If I were to be with him, he would definitely be an excellent partner. Unconsciously, she felt a slight sourness in her heart. She stared at the flames in a daze. Qi Yu and Mo Xie saw Li Xiaotian walk into the flames, but they did not stop her. Qi Yu snorted disdainfully, "It's too late. The pure yang energy has completely erupted, and it is extraordinarily strong. Her strength alone is not enough to help him overcome this crisis. That's why he's dead for sure." Mo Xie said, venting his hatred. His hatred for Tang Zheng could be described as monstrous. "Now it's your turn to die," Qi Yu said as he looked at Mo Xie with killing intent. "You really want to kill me?" Mo Xie asked. Qi Yu laughed loudly. "At this point, do you still want to ask such an idiotic question?" Mo Xie was dejected. There was indeed no need to ask. The two of them were mortal enemies and both wanted to kill the other. "General Mo, quickly leave." Suddenly, shouts rang out. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates at the peak of Heavenly Mountain all gave up on their battle with the four symbols venerables. They rushed into the sky and attacked Qi Yu. Mo Xie had almost given up hope, but the actions of his subordinates reignited the light of hope. He retreated without any hesitation. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates attacked Qi Yu from all directions. Qi Yu's killing intent surged as he roared, "Reckless things, seeking your own deaths. I'll help you." Battle Soul slashed down. With Qi Yu as the center, the sword light flew in all directions. This was only one sword, but it was more tyrannical, sharp, and decisive than tens of thousands of swords. Shwa shwa shwa. The sword light was like rain, rapidly falling down. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates all raised their treasures in an attempt to block. But all of this was futile under Battle Soul. All of the treasures could not withstand a single blow. There was only the sound of the sword light hitting treasures and bodies. In the next second, everything was silent. All of the attacks collapsed. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor seemed to have been immobilized and were frozen in midair. Emosia did not stop and did not look back because he knew that the outcome had already been decided. "Save me, save me." A weak voice entered Emosia's ears. His heart trembled as he saw the dying Yimayu lying on the ground not far away, looking at him pleadingly. Yimayu had suffered heavy injuries and could only watch as her own people were defeated and her so-called plan was foiled. She was on the verge of despair. She knew very well that in such a tragic battle, what awaited her was death. The only thing that comforted her was that Qiyu was certain that Tang Zheng would die without a doubt. Tang Zheng was finally going to die. She was overjoyed. She had looked forward to this countless times, but she was always disappointed. She was on the verge of despair, thinking that Tang Zheng was a monster that would not die. Finally, good news came from the heavens. Tang Zheng was no longer able to create a miracle. She really wanted to see Yi Dingdong's reaction after hearing the news. It would definitely be very exciting. She was looking forward to seeing that scene. Of course, all of this was her idea. The current plan was to preserve her life so that she could see that scene. Therefore, she used all her strength to shout weakly. As expected, Emosia heard it and looked at her. She immediately looked at him pitifully and lovingly. Emosia waved his hand and the ring on his finger released a bright light. He kept Yimayu inside and flew into the distance with a whoosh. Yimayu was the successor of the Nightmare Lord and controlled the heart's dream. She was of great use to Emosia, so he would naturally save her. However, he had no way of saving his other subordinates because they had to block Qiyu. A few of them could not block him, so all of them had to press forward to stall Qiyu and give him a chance to escape. A dignified expert of the Mahayana realm had to run for his life. If word got out, it would be extremely embarrassing. But for the sake of his life, so what if he lost face? He seemed to be afraid of seeing his subordinates die miserably at the hands of Qiyu. He only glanced at the raging flames on the mountain peak from the corner of his eyes, and then, without caring about his own safety, he used all his strength to escape. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor froze in midair. A few seconds later, their magic treasure shattered into pieces. Following that, they shattered into pieces. Blood splattered everywhere. It was an incomparably tragic sight. The sword light of the War Soul sword was like silk. Not only did it kill these people, it also cut them into pieces. Only Qiyu would be able to use such a terrifying technique, causing others to feel fear. Looking at the terrifying deaths of their companions, the remaining old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor did not escape. Tens of thousands of years ago, they were the most valiant and tenacious warriors, and now they were still the same. They didn't even need to exchange glances to encourage each other. They just stared straight at Qiyu and charged forward without hesitation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The War Soul sword flew up again. The sword light was resplendent, dispersing the darkness. In everyone's eyes, there was only the sword light left. It was extremely resplendent and terrifying. The air seemed to have frozen again. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor froze again. Everything was the same as before. Everyone turned into pieces again, but this time, they were even finer. Obviously, Qiyu watched Emosia escape with his own eyes while he was entangled by these people. The anger in his heart was too strong. Emosia, this is what you get for attacking me last time. Saint King is dead. I want all of you to die with him. Qiyu roared. His voice was like thunder, rumbling and spreading. The old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor heard this voice. Emosia, who had already escaped far away, also heard this voice. His heart was as cold as 10,000 years of ice. The Empyrean fairy was also attracted by this voice. She muttered to herself in shock, Saint King is dead? She had a deep impression of Saint King. Could it be that after the Battle of Mount Tai, the demons were ambushed by the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor and Saint King was killed by Emosia? That must be it. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Saint King escaped with the injured Qiyu, but they fell into the encirclement of the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. No wonder Chi-Yu was so angry and used such a terrifying method to kill the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. She had no sympathy. Both sides were her enemies. If they hurt each other, she would be able to reap the benefits. However, she couldn't feel happy. Looking at the raging flames, her heart was in turmoil. Was Li Xiaotian really unable to save Tang Zheng? Chapter 1346. The Empyrean fairy was worried about Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian. Before she could decide what to do, Chi-Yu had already wiped out all of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The peak of Heavenly Mountain was like hell on earth. Chi-Yu descended from the sky and walked towards the Empyrean fairy step by step, saying, "Fu Yao, he can't be saved." The Empyrean fairy suddenly turned her head and looked at Chi-Yu, who was covered in killing intent. She expressionlessly said, "He won't die." The heaven-swallowing technique can absorb energy from the outside world and transfer it into his body. Last time, the savage aura was like this. He was lucky enough to survive, but this time is different. Seeing the Empyrean fairy remain silent, Chi-Yu was not in a rush to attack and slowly said, "Do you know how terrifying the energy contained within the 9 golden crow souls is? If anyone were to absorb the energy within, their strength would definitely increase by a terrifying amount. However, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. That much energy is like a bomb that cannot be completely absorbed by a single person. It would be enough to explode one's meridians and body. Moreover, he has the 9 yang saint body, and the golden crow's soul has already ignited his pure yang energy. With these 2 fatal conditions added together, even an immortal would find it difficult to save him." Chi-Yu spoke with certainty and did not seem to be lying. The Empyrean fairy was able to discern this, and her heart skipped a beat. Although she had already guessed that the situation would be dire, she did not think that it would be this severe. What should she do now? Should she just let him die? She immediately made a decision in her heart. She definitely would not just watch him die. She walked towards the flames without hesitation. Chi-Yu was shocked and loudly shouted, "What are you doing? Do you want to make a meaningless sacrifice?" The Empyrean fairy turned a deaf ear to him and walked with firm steps. Her eyes were resolute. "Don't even think about it." Chi-Yu immediately ran towards the Empyrean fairy. The distance between them was not far to begin with, so he arrived almost instantly. He wanted to stop her. "Didn't you say that no one can save him? Why don't you let me have a try?" The Empyrean fairy was blocked and asked jokingly. Chi-Yu's face stiffened. He did think so, but there was nothing absolute in this world. Especially since Tang Zheng was too strange, Chi-Yu would not allow anything to happen to him. If the Empyrean fairy broke in and caused an accident, he would regret it so much that his intestines would turn green. Chi-Yu said bluntly. "Ehe, looks like you're not 100% sure either," the Empyrean fairy mocked. Chi-Yu's expression turned ugly as he said, "Of course I'm 100% sure." The Empyrean fairy shook her head. "You're just fooling yourself. I have to save him. You can't stop me." After saying this, she lifted her foot and stepped into the flames. "In front of me, don't even think about disobeying me." Chi-Yu shouted. Battle soul flashed and enveloped her. From front to back, left to right, the Empyrean fairy seemed to be in a dangerous whirlpool. The sharp sword Chi blocked her steps. Although it was only a step away, she could not cross it no matter what. "You're only a first-grade Mahayana realm cultivator. You won't be able to jump in my hands. Just give up." Chi-Yu changed his sword technique and the sword light quickly gathered. It was like a cage, firmly trapping her. If she dared to take half a step, she would be injured by the sword light. The Empyrean fairy understood this point, but she did not hesitate to take this step. Poof! Blood splattered. The Empyrean fairy was injured and blood flowed out. Roar! With a roar, the Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Moon Beast attacked Chi-Yu at the same time. They also wanted to do their part to stop Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu casually waved his hand and an invisible sword Chi burst out from his fingertips. He did not use a sword at all. With just his fingers, The sword Qi burst out was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Ping ping. The two strange beasts flew out. They did not even have time to scream before they fell into the distance. They smashed into two large craters and dust flew everywhere. They wanted to get up again, but after trying, they fell to the ground again. They gasped for breath and could not get up again. Two little things who don't know death. Qiyu snorted. A huge shadow shrouded over his head. Qiyu raised his eyelids and saw the four symbols Venerable's huge figure. Qiyu's expression changed. He said with a complicated tone, "Do you want to be my enemy?" The four symbols Venerable originally obeyed his orders, but now it was dead set on following Tang Zheng. One could imagine how Qiyu felt. The four symbols Venerable did not answer, but its actions showed its answer. A huge arm came crashing down with the force of 10,000 caddies. Your fate was already decided the moment you betrayed me. Qiyu was filled with killing intent. He raised two fingers and put them together. They were not inferior to a sword at all. He pointed lightly and the two fingers directly hit the four symbols Venerable. Poof! A small hole appeared in the chest of the indestructible four symbols Venerable. The four symbols Venerable was injured. This scene was simply too shocking. The Empyrean fairy saw this and opened her eyes wide in disbelief. She had always thought that the four symbols Venerable would never be injured. She never thought that she was too naive. Qiyu's understanding of the four symbols Venerable was far greater than others. Moreover, his current strength was too terrifying. Even the four symbols Venerable could not withstand the destructive power contained in this attack. The four symbols Venerable lowered its head, seemingly very surprised that it was injured. However, it did not retreat. Its arm still smashed down and hit Qiyu's shoulder. Bang! The dull sound was deafening. Qiyu frowned but did not retreat. He stared straight at the four symbols Venerable and said, "You dare to attack me." He raised his hand and grabbed the four symbols Venerable's arm. One was big while the other was small. There was a huge gap between the two arms. However, the four symbols Venerable's arm was raised and made cracking sounds. The four symbols Venerable seemed to be struggling to resist Qiyu. However, it was futile. There was no way to truly resist Qiyu. The veins on Qiyu's arm bulged. With a sudden wave, the four symbols Venerable's huge body flew up into the sky. The sound of air being torn was heard. The four symbols Venerable turned into a black dot and streaked across the sky like a shooting star. It actually disappeared without a trace. The four symbols Venerable had been flung away by Qiyu. Moreover, it was unknown where it had landed. This scene was far more shocking than Qiyu defeating the Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Lunar Beast. The Empyrean Fairy was flabbergasted and asked, "Qiyu, what realm has your cultivation reached?" "Ha, my cultivation is not something you can imagine." Qiyu did not say it explicitly, but there was no doubt that his cultivation had reached an extremely terrifying realm. The Empyrean Fairy knew that there was no way she could do anything. "Empyrean Fairy, surrender obediently and I can still spare your life." Qiyu said sternly. "Spare my life? Would you be so kind?" The Empyrean Fairy said mockingly. "Of course, I will be kind occasionally." Of course, Qiyu would not be merciful. He had obtained some information from various sources. He had always known that the Empyrean Fairy was the Emperor of Heaven's daughter. He did not know much about the Emperor of Heaven. After all, they were not from the same era. However, one thing was for sure. The Emperor of Heaven was an expert. Moreover, the Emperor of Heaven was not dead yet. Naturally, he wanted to recruit the Emperor of Heaven for his own use. The Empyrean Fairy was a pawn to lure the Emperor of Heaven out. If the Emperor of Heaven submitted to him, then the father and daughter would naturally be able to live. If not, then it would not be difficult to catch them all in one fell swoop. It was just that he did not know that the Emperor of Heaven's soul had merged with Yan Qingyi's body. Otherwise, he would have gone to find Yan Qingyi long ago. He would not have gone to such lengths to capture the Empyrean Fairy. The Saint King had died in battle. Qiyu no longer had a true general under his command. He was in urgent need of a general. The Emperor of Heaven was the most suitable candidate. This kind of general could replace him to do many things. After all, he could not do everything by himself. That would damage his image. After the demons transformed into the Jili tribe, although there were many people, there was no one who could be of great use. This was Chi Yu's predicament. The Empyrean fairy could not see through Chi Yu's thoughts. She did not believe that he would be kind. She coldly said, "No matter what you say, it is useless. I do not ask for your so-called mercy. I only want to save him." "Ha, impossible." Chi Yu laughed maniacally. Suddenly, his laughter came to an abrupt stop. Only one word came out of his mouth: trap. The ever-changing sword Chi was like an unbreakable rope that shrunk inward. The Empyrean fairy tried her best to struggle, but the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and veil could not shake it. In the end, the sword Chi completely trapped her. She could not move at all. It was as if she was tied up by a rope. The Empyrean fairy looked at the formless sword Chi in shock. The sword Chi had undergone a huge change. It had really become like a rope. Chi Yu saw the shock in her heart and explained, "Sword Chi is a kind of energy. Therefore, it also has the characteristics of ordinary energy. It has many forms. Like water, it is ever-changing. For example, what you are seeing now." Only then did the Empyrean fairy realize that she was really a frog at the bottom of a well. She had always thought that sword Chi was extremely sharp and had no other form. However, the sword Chi that trapped her was not only sharp but also flexible. She finally understood that Chi Yu was a true master swordsman. The previous sword god and Tian Chanzi's transcendent flying immortal paled in comparison. They were not even worth mentioning. The funny thing is that Tangjing has always treated the transcendent flying immortal as a treasure. He doesn't know that this is the true ultimate sword technique. The true profoundness of swordsmanship is contained within. Chi Yu proudly showed off, not forgetting to mock Tangjing. The Empyrean fairy felt powerless. She wanted to resist, but after seeing this scene, she had no way to do so. In front of Chi Yu, she could not even die, let alone escape. This was the gap between them. There was also a gap between Mahayana realm cultivators. Chi Yu hooked his finger and the sword Chi lifted the Empyrean fairy and slowly flew toward Chi Yu. Finally, it stopped in front of Chi Yu. Their eyes met and Chi Yu clicked his tongue. "Chi Yu, that brat, is really muddle-headed. He has the 9 yang saint body and you have the 9 yin saint body. You are a perfect match. If the two of you were to have sex, it would greatly benefit both of your cultivations. However, he is stubborn and did not touch you." The Empyrean fairy was both anxious and angry. She loudly rebuked, "Do you think he is like you? He is much more noble than you. What's the use of being noble? Strength is the most important." Chi Yu curled his lips and disdainfully said, "I also have the 9 yang saint body. I will not let go of such a good opportunity like yours." Chapter 1347. The Empyrean fairy stared at Chi Yu in shock and asked, "What do you want to do?" Chi Yu laughed loudly. "What do you think I want to do? Although I have the 9 yang saint body, I have already passed that life and death crisis. Why would I need you?" The Empyrean fairy let out a sigh of relief. "You have a greater use for me." Chi Yu said, "What use?" "You are the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven, so I want you to find your father." "My father?" The Empyrean fairy was shocked. "Why are you looking for him?" "To take him under my wing." Chi Yu's reply was straightforward. "What, did I hear wrong?" The Empyrean fairy's eyes widened with a look of disbelief. Chi Yu did not care about her reaction and said, "You didn't hear wrong, I want to take him under my wing." The Empyrean fairy laughed loudly. As his daughter, she understood her father very well. He was someone who would rather break than bend. It had always been others who submitted to him, so how could he submit to others? No matter how strong that person was, he would never lower his head. "You think it's impossible?" "Of course it's impossible. In my world, nothing is impossible." Chi Yu was full of confidence. The Empyrean fairy coldly snorted and said, "You want to use me to threaten him? You are very smart." Chi Yu praised, not hiding his plan at all. "You will be disappointed because I also do not know where he is. The Empyrean fairy spoke the truth. The Emperor of Heaven and Yanqingyi had merged into one, so Yanqingyi was nowhere to be found. Naturally, there was no way to find the Emperor of Heaven. Speaking of which, the Empyrean fairy really wanted to find the Emperor of Heaven, but she had no clue. Qiyu did not take it to heart and said indifferently, "Who said I'm going to look for him? He'll come for me. I'm sure of it. It's what any father would do." The meaning of this sentence was very obvious. Qiyu wanted to use the Empyrean fairy as bait to lure the snake out of its hole so that the Emperor of Heaven would take the initiative to find him. Qiyu's scheming was indeed very clever. The Empyrean fairy's expression changed. She fell silent, not knowing what to do. She knew how much her father loved her. If he knew the news, he would still come to save her regardless of whether it was a mountain of knives or a sea of fire. She wasn't sure if her father was a match for Qiyu. The current Qiyu was too unfathomable, causing people to feel a deep sense of helplessness. "I'm looking forward to meeting him," Qiyu said longingly. "I won't let you succeed. Don't even think of using me as a bargaining chip to threaten my father. That's not up to you. Let's go." The Empyrean fairy couldn't help but glance at Tang Zheng. That ball of flames was so dazzling that it was impossible to see what was going on inside. "There's no need to look. He's dead for sure. Once this fire burns out, it'll be the moment when his life ends," Qiyu said. The Empyrean fairy bit her lips, causing them to turn purple. She wanted to retort Qiyu, but she found that there was no way to do so. "There's nothing much to see in this fire. Let's go," Qiyu shouted as he turned around and left. The Empyrean fairy, trapped by the sword Qi, followed him step by step. She looked back 3 times with every step. She wanted to see a miracle happen and see Tang Zheng walk out of the flames. But in the end, she was disappointed. The fire was too strong and seemed capable of burning everything. No one walked out of it. Qiyu kidnapped the Empyrean fairy and left the peak of Sky Mountain. Only the raging flames were left. The wind blew, causing the flames to burn even higher and more vigorously. The Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Moon Beast finally crawled up. They turned their gazes from the direction where Qiyu disappeared to. Their eyes were filled with despair. The 2 strange beasts limped to the front of the flames. They looked at each other, not knowing what to do. They couldn't save anyone. They could only wait at the side for the flames to burn out. This was simply torture. In the depths of the flames, the 2 people overlapped each other. They were surrounded by layers of flames and couldn't be seen from the outside. Even their voices were completely blocked out by the flames. Li Xiaotian's voice was gentle and moving. It was full of temptation. After the intense tearing pain, her heart was filled with joy. She had protected her chastity for more than 20 years, but at this moment, she had completely given it to Tang Zheng. She was completely willing. She was even filled with joy. Fang Shishir and the others wanted to stop her, but in the end, they didn't succeed. She got what she wanted. From now on, she was his woman. Just like any other woman, she could openly stay by his side. This would be the happiest and most fulfilling thing. Looking at the face so close to him, his eyes were a little dazed. He couldn't focus his gaze. This was the aftereffect of using the pure yang energy. Li Xiaotian knew that he didn't know what happened at this moment and what it meant to her. However, she believed that once he knew, he would take responsibility. Of course, Li Xiaotian's original intention was to save him. She didn't have any complicated thoughts. Tang Zheng instinctively hugged Li Xiaotian tightly. The pure yin energy flowed into his body continuously. He absorbed it hungrily. His skin had turned fiery red, like burning charcoal. However, this didn't hurt Li Xiaotian. The pure yin energy in her body naturally resisted the heat and flames. This was the special characteristic of flames. It burned foreign objects, but it didn't hurt people with pure yin energy. In the past, Li Xiaotian couldn't sense the pure yin energy. However, at this moment, she could clearly sense the loss of pure yin energy. It was the first time in her life that she felt pure yin energy. So this is what he dreamed of. She muttered to herself, trying to cater to Tang Zheng's needs. Time passed little by little. The 2 of them were completely unaware of what was happening outside. They didn't know that the Empyrean fairy had been kidnapped. Tang Zheng's consciousness didn't completely disappear. He just lost control of his body. He knew that he had reached a critical moment of life and death. The power of the Golden Crow's soul is too terrifying. Because of the sky-swallowing technique, it merged into my body. If I can't digest this energy and harmonize the pure yang energy, I will definitely die. The energy of the Golden Crow's soul rampaged through his body, tearing his meridians bit by bit. But one of his meridians broke. Finally, it shattered into pieces. The energy was like a flood that broke through a dam. Without the restraint of his meridians, it directly rushed into his muscles and bones. This time, the unimaginable pain stimulated his nerves, torturing his body and mind. He couldn't help but scream. Papa! Another meridian was completely broken. An even more violent energy rushed into his muscles and bones. An even more intense pain almost engulfed him. This time, his scream came to an abrupt end. He didn't have the strength to scream anymore. Without meridians, my true chi won't have a path to travel. Won't I be destroyed? Even if I survive, what's the use? He thought in despair. Meridians were an essential part of the human body. It was also the path for a cultivator's true chi to travel. Without a path, true chi wouldn't be able to travel anywhere else. How could one use magic or use magic treasures? Tang Zheng was very clear on this point. Therefore, when he saw his meridians break, his heart fell to the bottom. This situation didn't stop. Instead, it became worse and worse. When the 8th crack sounded, his 8 main meridians were completely destroyed. An ordinary person only had 8 main meridians. When all 8 main meridians broke, their life would come to an end. Even if they survived, they would be like a walking corpse. Tang Zheng was a celestial with the 9 yang saint body. The biggest difference between him and an ordinary person was that he had 9 main meridians. When he saw all 8 main meridians break, he placed his hopes on the last main meridian. Don't break, please don't break. He silently prayed. However, he understood that there weren't many miracles in this world. With the other 8 main meridians broken, how long could this 9th meridian last? Suddenly, a cool wave of pure yin energy entered his body from the outside. Tang Zheng was startled. He immediately realized that this was pure yin energy entering his body. Where did this pure yin energy come from? He was unable to control his body, so he was unable to sense what was happening in the outside world. He didn't know that it was Li Xiaotian who had saved him, but he knew that someone had definitely saved him. Who was it? The Empyrean fairy? Tang Zheng knew what this meant. It was a huge sacrifice, especially for a girl. It wasn't something an ordinary person could make such a decision. He remembered the Empyrean fairy's kiss. But he immediately thought of Li Xiaotian. She also had a large amount of pure yin energy in her body, so he couldn't exclude her. Furthermore, she had given him a kiss without hesitation. That boldness had left a deep impression on him. No matter who it was, in order to save me, they all made a huge sacrifice. Whether or not I can pass this crisis, I will remember it for the rest of my life. He silently made up his mind. The pure yin energy was like a timely rain, suppressing the pure yang energy. Even the energy of the Golden Crow's soul had calmed down a little. It didn't break through the 9th main meridian. The only main meridian allowed Tang Zheng to operate his skills and control his true chi, trying to suppress the energy of the Golden Crow's soul. However, good things didn't last long. Before he could cheer, the pure yang energy became restless again. Like a surging wave, it directly swallowed the pure yin energy. He immediately realized that he was in trouble. This pure yin energy isn't enough. There's no way to reconcile so much pure yang energy. He almost despaired. If the pure yin energy wasn't enough, it meant that all his efforts were in vain. As expected, the pure yang energy was stirring up trouble again. The energy of the Golden Crow's soul also became violent. It kept colliding in the 9th main meridian, as if it was dealing with the other 8 main meridian, completely destroying it. The 9th main meridian was struggling to hold on. It was on the verge of collapse, as if it could be torn apart at any time. The pure yin energy was still merging into his body. He knew that he still needed more pure yin energy. Thus, his body instinctively reacted, and the range of his movements became bigger and bigger. Li Xiaotian's comfortable moans were no longer gentle. They even sounded high-pitched, mixed with a trace of pain. She couldn't help but frown. But she still gritted her teeth and persevered. With great difficulty, she catered to Tang Jing and transferred more pure yin energy to her. Chapter 1348. The pure yin energy in Li Xiaotian's body was being emptied little by little. Pure yin energy was a vital part of a woman's life. Once a large amount of it was lost, it could endanger her life. Yi Dingdang was a good example. If she did not have the pure yin energy in the gate of heaven to replenish her, she would not be able to recover. How could the intelligent Li Xiaotian not know this? But she still did not reject Tang Zheng's request. Li Xiaotian's complexion became worse and worse. Her face gradually became pale. Especially under the light of the fire, she looked even more haggard. Tang Jing did not notice this at all. His mind was completely immersed in his body. The 8 main meridians were completely destroyed, and the 9th was in danger. At the crucial moment, the vast and mighty pure yin energy rushed into his body like a flood, immediately suppressing the pure yang energy. The 9th main meridian slowly stabilized and flashed with a golden light. It was like a golden dragon, swimming around. His body was like a sea, and this golden dragon-like 9th main meridian was swimming around in the sea. Tang Zheng was dumbstruck. From the 9th main meridian, he felt a surge of dragon energy. Realization dawned upon him as he recalled that the dragon vein in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum had merged with his 9th main meridian. After that, he had merged with so many dragon souls, and the dragon qi in his 9th main meridian had become stronger and stronger. This time, it was completely revealed, which was especially terrifying. However, the 9th main meridian was actually out of its fixed position. This kind of situation was unheard of. Although the 9th main meridian was swimming around unsteadily, it was still connected to Tang Zheng's mind. He could clearly feel that the true energy in it was getting stronger and stronger. The energy of the Golden Crow's soul was completely dispersed in his body. His body became a vast sea, and the 9th main meridian was swimming in it. Although the pure yang energy suppressed the signs, it still set off bursts of flames in his body. The pure yin energy was like a fire extinguisher, trying to extinguish these flames. Tang Zheng's consciousness became clearer little by little. He watched as the 9th main meridian continuously absorbed the energy of the Golden Crow's soul, and his true energy rose steadily. Boom! A muffled thunder-like sound rang out as his Junqi rose to a new height, directly rushing to the limit of his meridians. He had directly soared into the sky and reached the peak of the divine transformation realm. His meridians were completely filled with true energy, and once his true energy underwent a qualitative change, he would be able to cross the threshold from the deity transformation stage to the grand ascension stage. His true qi was indeed changing bit by bit. The total amount did not increase, but as his meridians flowed, he absorbed the soul of the Golden Crow from all over the place. The quality of his true qi was quietly changing. Could it really be possible to break through to the Grand Ascension stage in one fell swoop? Tang Zheng was extremely excited. Before his Junqi could undergo a qualitative change, the pure yang energy had already gradually calmed down. The pure yin energy was already very weak, as if it could disappear at any time. All of a sudden, his eyes regained consciousness and flashed with the light of wisdom. What entered his eyes was a haggard yet beautiful face. He was shocked and stared straight at the other party. He was hugging her tightly. Her eyes were blurred, as if she could close her eyes at any moment. Their surroundings were still enveloped in flames, but the flames were clearly much weaker. Li Xiaotian. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright. A hint of joy appeared in Li Xiaotian's eyes. He squeezed out a smile with difficulty and stammered, "You finally recovered. You gave me your pure yin energy?" How could Tang Jing not understand what had happened? The two met each other with sincerity, their bodies naked, and their skin intimately touching. He had previously speculated that it was either the Empyrean fairy or Li Xiaotian who was replenishing her pure Yin energy. Now it seemed that Li Xiaotian had saved him at a critical moment. "Don't worry, I'll save you," Tang Zheng comforted. "I know I can't be saved. Now that I've finally become your woman, I'm very happy. Goodbye." Li Xiaotian seemed to have used up all of his strength to say this, and his breathing became very weak. Tang Zheng's heart was filled with all kinds of emotions. Li Xiaotian's thoughts couldn't be more obvious. She was different from other girls. Although she had always suppressed her feelings and didn't tell Tang Zheng. However, this time she used her actions to express her feelings, but the price she paid was everyone's lives. Tang Zheng's eyes couldn't help but turn red. He kept shaking his head and anxiously said, "No, don't say anything. I'll save you right away." He quickly took out the 9 transformations soul return pill and tried to feed it to her. "Farewell." Li Xiaotian's weak words came out of her mouth. Her voice was like a mosquito, but it was like thunder exploding in Tang Zheng's mind. He was suddenly startled and stared straight at her. Her head drooped down and her eyes lost all signs of life. She slowly closed her eyes and stopped breathing. Tang Zheng lost the ability to speak. He just stared at her. The 9 transformations soul return pill in his hand looked like he had lost his soul. Tang Zheng looked up to the sky and howled, hugging her tightly. The howl disappeared, but no sound came out of his mouth. The tear fell. He was crying silently. Scenes of his acquaintance with Li Xiaotian flashed through his mind like a movie. When he met her on the train, she was cunning and scheming. With just a few words, she almost caused him to die under the sword of the cold-faced killer. After that, she followed him like a dog fart plaster and met her in the prehistoric heavenly tomb. She took away her heaven-shocking bow and shooting sun arrows, causing her to fail at the last moment and fly into a rage. For a long time, Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian were enemies. They were wary of each other and plotted against each other. However, the affairs of the world changed, making it difficult to understand. Li Xiaotian lost his memories and became a good person. Little by little, he began to fall in love with Tang Zheng. He silently accompanied him by his side, gave him advice, seized the Li Palace, and managed it in an orderly fashion. He had known her for too long, and their grudges were so entangled that they almost killed each other. But now, she was actually willing to sacrifice her life for him. The changes in her heart were moving. The scene disappeared, and his gaze landed on her face again. Her haggard face was so beautiful that it moved one's heart, like a sleeping beauty. The corner of her mouth actually curled up into a smile at the last moment, as if to say that she did not regret it and was very satisfied with this result. Tang Zheng's heart felt as if it had been ruthlessly stabbed by a knife. It was dripping with blood, and his heart ached to the extreme. He panted heavily, as if he didn't have to use all his strength to even breathe. This was an extremely sad situation. "I said I would save you, so I will definitely save you." After a long while, Tang Zheng finally walked out of his dazed state. Gritting his teeth, he squeezed out these words. Although Li Xiaotian was already completely dead, Tang Zheng was not an ordinary person, so he naturally would not give up. He had already secretly vowed in his heart that he would save her. Whether it was a mountain of blades, a sea of flames, or the hell of Avicii, he would charge in without hesitation and save her. He took out a set of clothes and carefully dressed her. Looking at her naked body, he did not have any thoughts of lust, only endless love. A woman who was willing to give up her life for him. If a man was not moved, then he was definitely a cold-blooded animal. Perhaps, even a cold-blooded animal would have his blood heated up and his heart melted when faced with this matter. Tang Zheng was not a cold-blooded animal, and his heart had already melted. In the depths of his heart, Li Xiaotian's figure gradually became clear and settled, occupying a place. The two of them had already put on their clothes. Although the flames were still burning around them, they were suppressed by an invisible force and could not approach the two of them. He carried her and walked out of the flames step by step. Every time he took a step, the flames would automatically split to the sides. The moment he completely walked out of the flames seemed to have lost their fuel and extinguished with a poof. The Thundercloud Beast and Red Moon Beast had been guarding in front of the flames. The two beasts did not know what to do and could only wait. Finally, they saw Tang Jing walking out, but he was carrying a person in his arms. When the flames extinguished, they hurriedly limped forward. If Chi Yu saw this scene, he would definitely be so shocked that his eyeballs would fall to the ground. He was very sure that Tang Jing would definitely die, so he did not chase into the flames and kill him with his sword. However, the final result completely overturned his judgment. Tang Jing did not die and was lucky enough to survive. Actually, according to common sense, Chi Yu's judgment was correct. The yang energy contained in the 9 golden crow souls was unimaginably strong. When the souls of the golden crow were absorbed into his body, the pure yang energy in his body exploded. Furthermore, the yang energy pushed the pure yang energy to an unprecedented peak state. This was not something that could be reconciled with a little bit of pure yin energy. A person's pure yin energy was not enough to reconcile so much pure yang energy. However, Chi Yu never thought that Li Shaotian would give up his life and give all his pure yin energy to Tang Jing. Every woman had a certain amount of pure yin energy. Because of their different physiques, the amount of pure yin energy they had was also different. Pure yin energy was a part of maintaining life. A woman must have a certain amount of pure yin energy in her body in order to survive. If the amount of pure yin energy was lower than this limit, something would happen to her body. Just like Yi Dingdang, she would lose consciousness. There was also a lot of pure yin energy below this limit, but they did not dare to use it easily. Chi Yu was very clear about this, so even if he knew that Li Shaotian used pure yin energy to save Tang Jing, he was not worried. That was because he never thought that Li Shaotian would use the amount of pure yin energy below the limit. In the end, he even contributed all of his pure yin energy. This was suicide. Chi Yu knew that Li Shaotian was a smart person and would definitely not do such a suicidal thing. However, no matter how much he thought about it, he still made a mistake. If it was the previous Li Shaotian, she would not even think about it and would not do such a suicidal thing. But now, Li Shaotian was no longer the previous her, and the person she wanted to save was Tang Jing. Therefore, she was willing to give up her life. This was a victory that was exchanged with her life, a life for a life. Chapter 1349. Tang Jing's eyes were red. He raised his head and saw the Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Lunar Beast. They were looking at him with burning eyes. With a glance, he saw the injuries on their bodies. His heart tightened as he asked, "How are your injuries?" Hearing Tang Jing speak, the two beasts were surprised and happy. They quickly replied, "Our injuries are not serious." Tang Jing was relieved. He looked around and saw that there was no one else standing on the peak of the heavenly mountain. An aura of death enveloped the peak. Where are the others? He still remembered that when his pure yang energy erupted, the few parties were still fighting. It was impossible that they were all dead. The two beasts talked at once. One said a little, the other added a little. Finally, the truth was revealed. Tang Jing was dumbfounded. He looked at the scattered corpses. Those were the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor. They had all died under War Soul. When he thought of War Soul, his heart was filled with an indescribable anger. That was one of his most precious treasures. However, because the Sword Soul had fallen into the hands of Chi Yu, he was particularly shocked when he heard of Chi Yu's terrifying killing methods. With his cultivation and understanding of sword arts, he was completely unable to unleash the power of War Soul. The power that War Soul had released in Chi Yu's hands made him pale in comparison. Other than Nemo Xie, the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor had all been wiped out. It was truly lamentable. These old enemies from tens of thousands of years ago, because of him, Chi Yu had turned defeat into victory. However, this was not the main point of his concern. He asked in a deep voice, "You said that the 4 symbols venerable was injured by Chi Yu and was sent flying. The Empyrean fairy was also kidnapped by Chi Yu?" The two beasts nodded at the same time. Tang Jing's heart had already sunk to the bottom of the valley. There was no doubt that in order to stop the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates, although they had succeeded in making the soul of the Golden Crow completely disappear and prevented the destruction of this world, the price they had to pay was too painful. However, we heard from Chiyu that he wanted to use the Empyrean Fairy to lure the Emperor of Heaven out and take him under his wing, the Thundercloud Beast added. What? Tang Zheng was shocked. Chiyu's heart is so big, you actually want to subdue the Emperor of Heaven. He knew a thing or two about the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven was definitely a person who would rather break than bend. How could he submit to Chiyu? Moreover, using the Empyrean Fairy to lure him out, if he really did come out, there would probably be another huge battle. Is the Emperor of Heaven a match for Chiyu? He didn't know. The Emperor of Heaven and Yan Qingyi have merged into one and disappeared. Even if Chiyu really wants to lure the snake out of its hole, he might not succeed. Before that, the Empyrean Fairy is safe for the time being. Tang Zheng analyzed in his mind. Immediately, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The Empyrean Fairy's life was temporarily saved. This was a blessing in disguise. I should find Yan Qingyi as soon as possible and discuss a countermeasure with her. Since Chiyu wants to lure the snake out of its hole, he will definitely reveal his whereabouts so that the Emperor of Heaven can find him. This way, we can save the Empyrean Fairy. Although the plan was good, what would he do if he really found Chiyu? He didn't have a good plan for the time being. His cultivation had broken through to the 9th level of the Divine Transformation Realm in one fell swoop and was only one step away from the Mahayana realm. However, when facing Chiyu, he had no hope of winning at all. From the situation described by the two beasts, Chiyu had an overwhelming advantage when facing Mo Xie and the Empyrean Fairy, the two first-level Mahayana realm experts. From this, it could be seen that Chiyu's cultivation was really too unfathomable. Seeing that he was silent and his expression kept changing, the two beasts looked at him worriedly and were at a loss for what to do. Facing such a predicament, they had no solution at all. Tang Zheng glanced at them and said, "Let's go home." "What about the Empyrean Fairy and the 4 symbols venerable?" "I will find them, but not now," Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. The impact of this catastrophe was too great. He didn't know what would happen to his family. Chiyu had won an overwhelming victory and was in the limelight for a while. Moreover, his whereabouts were strange. Going to find him directly was tantamount to suicide. In addition, the most important thing was that he had to save Li Xiaotian. This was the most important thing. Since Chiyu thought that he was dead, with Chiyu's temper, he wouldn't bother to deal with his family in the capital. In his mind, those people couldn't even withstand a single blow and weren't worth mentioning. If he directly attacked them, it would be a disgrace to his status. Therefore, by pretending to be dead to the outside world, he could buy more time for himself and his family instead. This was because once Chiyu knew that he was not dead, he would definitely not let him go. He would probably directly kill his way to the capital and take his life. Although the inner demons had been resurrected, judging from Chiyu's performance, he was too strong. It was unknown whether the inner demons could resist him. It was not easy to fake death. He had to guard this secret to the death. Therefore, he looked at the two beasts seriously and said, "Next, I will give you a very important mission." "What mission?" They were shocked. They opened their eyes wide and stared at him like curious babies. "Spread the news of my death." "What? Spread the news of your death?" They cried out in alarm at the same time. The Thundercloud Beast was dumbfounded and asked, "Aren't you still alive?" "I am not dead, but other people don't know." "Because Chiyu thinks that I am dead," Tang Zheng said meaningfully. The Thundercloud Beast's eyes were full of stars. The words dead and not dead echoed in its mind. It really couldn't understand the meaning behind Tang Zheng's words. The Red Moon Beast was much smarter. After thinking for a while, it said, "You want people to think that you are dead?" Tang Zheng looked at it approvingly and said, "Yes, since Chiyu thinks that I am, then I will fulfill his wish. Using this opportunity, I have more important things to do." "What things?" Tang Zheng looked down at the person in his arms and said softly, "Revive her." "Is dead?" The Red Moon Beast and the Thundercloud Beast were shocked. They stared at Li Xiaotian in shock. They thought that she was injured. They never thought that she was dead. She is already dead. How do you revive her? The Red Moon Beast felt that it was unbelievable and couldn't help but ask. There must be a way, Tang Jing said stubbornly. Speaking of which, Tang Jing never had anyone revive a dead person. Back then, after Yi Xuanji took the life-continuing pill, his lifespan increased by 10 years. This attracted the attention of the ghost realm. They sent ghost messengers to capture his soul and bring it to the ghost realm for questioning. Yi Xuanji was not dead. He just lost his soul and became a walking corpse. Tang Zheng could go to the ghost realm to find his soul and revive him. But Li Xiaotian was different. She was really dead. Her soul would enter the ghost realm. He wasn't sure if she could be revived successfully. But as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he wouldn't give up. The Red Moon Beast looked at him in disbelief. Based on its knowledge, how could a dead person come back to life? This was beyond its imagination. This was the difference between the sky beyond heaven and this world. The sky beyond heaven was not a mother-child world, so it didn't have its own ghost realm. After a person died, their soul would disappear completely. There was no such thing as a soul entering the ghost realm and being reincarnated. In fact, the Dragon Clan's world was similar to the sky beyond heaven. After a Dragon Clan's death, the dragon soul would not disappear, but it would not enter other worlds. The Great Thousand Worlds were different from each other and had their own characteristics. Your injuries are not serious. You have to go home on your own. I have to go home first and contact the relevant people. Are we not the only ones who know that you are still alive? Yes. Tang Jing nodded his head. After experiencing the news of his death, Tang Jing realized that if he were to hide the news from his closest family, it would be a very cruel thing to do. So, this time, he had to tell his loved ones that he was still alive. This was to prevent them from being too sad. He also believed that they would keep the secret for him. I will only tell a few of them. As for the rest, you will have to go back and tell them that I am dead, Tang Jing said. Understood. We will complete the mission. No one will know that you are still alive from us. The two beasts promised as they clapped their claws. Tang Jing nodded and shouted, Somersault Cloud. He jumped on the somersault cloud and disguised it. He hid in the somersault cloud and flew toward the capital city. The Red Moon Beast and the Thundercloud Beast were slower. They flew toward the capital city on their own. The somersault cloud was like an ordinary cloud that flew above the capital city. After Tang Jing landed, he immediately performed an illusion to hide his whereabouts. When he returned to the villa, he saw that it was a mess. It was obvious that there had been a battle. He was shocked. Could it be that the enemy had attacked? What about the others? He walked toward the villa quickly. When he saw that the formation outside the villa was not destroyed, he was relieved. The situation was not too bad. He quietly passed through the formation and walked into the villa. He realized that there were many more witch tribesmen on guard, and they looked like they were on tenterhooks. He did not let the witch clan members discover him. He quietly entered the villa and went to his grandfather's room first. The old man lived in a villa next to his. It was much quieter. He could sense that his grandfather was in the room. There were even witch clan members guarding the door to guard against enemies. Tang Jing nodded his head in relief. The witch clan elder understood his thoughts and protected his grandfather in all aspects. He did not alert the guards and quietly climbed in through the window. As soon as he stepped on the ground, he used his divine ability and isolated the room from the outside world. It was not that he was worried about the witch clan, but there were too many people and the chances of the news being leaked were too high. Little Zheng, why are you back? Tang Dehai jumped up from his chair and asked in surprise when he saw his grandson who had quietly appeared in the room. Grandfather, did something happen at home? Are you okay? Tang Jing asked. Tang Dehai sighed and said, That's right. Not long after you left, someone came to attack the villa and was blocked by the array formation outside. Fortunately, the people of the Yen clan came, and everyone worked together to drive them away. Tang Jing frowned and asked, Who is so bold to attack us? They are all a group of ordinary people, so we can't deal with them like how we deal with enemies. In short, it's very troublesome. Luckily, The sons disappeared and they were finally chased away. Ordinary people? Chapter 1350. Tang Zheng was flabbergasted that ordinary people would attack his home. He had no enmity with them, so why would they do such a thing? After listening to his grandfather's narration, he gradually understood that these ordinary people knew their identity as cultivators and blamed the disaster brought by the golden crow's soul on them. His intuition told him that there was something fishy going on. They disguised themselves well, so how could ordinary people know their identity? But he did not tell his grandfather and only comforted him for a while before reminding him that he would fake his death. Tang Dehai was very surprised as he did not understand why he would do such a thing. But he believed in him unconditionally, so he did not ask. "Little Zheng, don't worry. I will definitely not tell anyone." Tang Dehai held his grandson's hand and said solemnly. Tang Zheng left the room and went to another villa. Before he entered, he found that there were many people in the living room and the atmosphere was very serious. He did not show himself but relied on illusions to quietly come to the corner of the living room. Not only were his relatives in the living room, but the Yen family was also here. Everyone was discussing the identity of the attacker. They all thought that there was something fishy going on and that there was definitely someone behind this. However, they could not guess who the person behind this was. Could it be the chief? Yi Dingdang asked on a whim. "We can't rule out this possibility. I heard that he seemed to have appeared again and his position in the upper echelons has risen. Many people are biased towards him and some of his opponents have been suppressed by him." Yen Qishan was well informed and knew a lot of inside information. Tang Zheng was shocked. Could it be that he was the one behind this? He had to save Li Xiaotian first. The other party did not cause any big waves, so he could deal with them later. Heaven Monk remained silent the entire time. Regarding this so-called attack, he was more concerned about what happened at the peak of Heaven Mountain. The 9 golden crows' souls fell, proving that the operation was a success. He was very clear that this success required a huge price to pay and even sacrifice. After all, the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates must have made full preparations to condense the golden crow's soul. What was the specific situation? He felt as if there was a huge rock pressing down on his heart. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look towards a corner of the hall, his gaze as sharp as a knife. That was exactly where Tang Zheng was hiding. He was shocked. Had he been seen through by Tian Chanzi? He didn't act rashly. He also stared at Tian Chanzi. Their eyes met, but Tian Chanzi couldn't see him. Fang Shishir noticed Tian Chanzi's strange expression and asked curiously, "Master, what's wrong?" Tian Chanzi retracted his gaze and shook his head. "Maybe I'm just too sensitive. I keep feeling like someone is spying on us." "Someone is spying?" The others were horrified and looked left and right, yet they didn't notice the figure of an outsider, and they couldn't help but feel bewildered. "Don't worry, maybe I'm thinking too much." Tian Chanzi didn't want everyone to be too nervous, so he shook his head and comforted them. "I wonder how the peak of Heaven Mountain is doing." Marshall sighed. "It must have succeeded. The spirit of the Golden Crow has disappeared." Lu Qingmei said. The others nodded in agreement. Everyone was gathered in the hall, so he couldn't show himself. Seeing the group of people frowning, he was worried that once the news of his death came back, it would cause a huge uproar. Just as he was thinking of a way to lure someone back to the room so that he could show himself, the door was pushed open with a bang. Almost all of the Witch Clan people were standing outside the door, their faces filled with indescribable pain. Seeing this, the elder asked in a deep voice, "What happened? Why are you so careless?" The Witch Clan people separated, and the Thundercloud Beast and the Scarlet Moon Beast walked in. Tang Zheng's heart tightened. These two fellows only came back a little later than him. It seemed like the news of his death would be announced soon. Everyone saw that other than the two beasts, there was no one else. They had a bad feeling in their hearts. "Thundercloud Beast, Scarlet Moon Beast, why are you the only ones back?" Fang Shishir asked impatiently. "That's right, where's Tang Zheng? Where's the Empyrean Fairy and Li Shun?" The others looked at them nervously with burning eyes. afraid that they would hear the bad news that they were afraid of. The two beasts' eyes were filled with heartbreak and pain. According to their agreement with Tang Zheng, they sobbed and said, "Master, Tang Zheng is dead." What? Cries of surprise rose from all directions. Everyone thought that they had heard wrongly, but seeing each other's reactions, they knew that they had not heard wrongly. Everyone stood up and strode over to the two beasts. They asked, "Did you make a mistake? How could he die?" The two beasts had already discussed the wording and said in a pained voice, "It's true, he's dead." They spoke intermittently about everything that had happened at the peak of Heaven Mountain. They only changed the final ending and changed it to Tang Zheng's death. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was as if they had been immobilized and were rooted to the spot. Bang! Feng Shishir closed her eyes and fell to the ground with a loud bang. This time was different from the last time. Last time, it was someone else who sent the news. This time, the Thundercloud Beast and Scarlet Moon Beast witnessed it with their own eyes. How could it be fake? Moreover, everyone knew that the danger this time was far greater than the previous time. Naturally, they believed the two beasts' words. Yi Dingdong's boundless vitality seemed to have been sucked out of her body. Although she did not faint, it was as if she had become a different person. Marshall kept shaking her head, her eyes were wet. She muttered to herself, "How could he die? How could he die?" To Marshall, other than being her beloved, Tang Zheng had another identity. He was the son of her master and master's wife. If they knew that their son was dead, they would not be able to live. They had lost their son once, and this second blow was unbearable. Lu Qingli seemed to have been possessed. Her body went soft and fell onto the sofa. Her knees hit a hard object and immediately bruised. She did not notice it at all. On the contrary, the one with the biggest reaction was Mu Hongyan. She had always been a strong businesswoman. She screamed and kept shaking her head, "No, he can't be dead." She had once lost her husband. It was an incomparably heavy blow, but she was strong enough to withstand it. Later on, she met Tang Zheng. Although it was a secret relationship, she had completely given her heart to him. Losing her beloved for the second time, even if she was incomparably strong, she could not bear it. She did not care to hide her relationship with Tang Zheng. "Tang Zheng, didn't you say that you would always be with me? You still have to accompany Nana. Why did you leave? You are too cruel. How can you bear to let me lose my lover for the second time? What is the meaning of my life?" Mu Hongyan muttered to herself. If these words were said normally, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. After all, no one would have thought that she and Tang Zheng would have such a relationship. But at this moment, everyone was immersed in grief, and their shock was greatly reduced. They just turned to look at her and did not say anything. "Wah, brother." Nana burst into tears. Tears fell from her tender cheeks like pearls. Her crying was heart-wrenching, as if it was tearing the hearts of others. Princess Anne's reaction was relatively calm. Although she also had feelings for Tang Zheng, after all, there was no real relationship. She just widened her eyes in horror. In just a second, the atmosphere in the big room completely changed. Heavy, painful, and depressed shrouded everyone's hearts. Yen Qishan and Yen Luyun looked at each other. They really could not believe this news. In their eyes, Tang Zheng was like a cockroach that could not be killed. They had never thought that he would die. Bang! With another muffled sound, the elder of the Wu tribe knelt on the ground. Tears flowed down his face. He cried out hysterically, "Master! Master!" The other Wu tribe members also knelt in the direction of Sky Mountain. Their tears were like a flood that broke the dam, covering everyone's cheeks. Tian Chanzi was extremely shocked. However, he was, after all, experienced and knowledgeable. He was calmer and did not lose his composure too much. However, he still could not digest this news. When Tang Zheng saw the scene, he was extremely anxious. He wished that he could immediately rush out and free them from the quagmire of pain. In the end, he controlled himself. A little impatience spoils great plans. However, he had to quickly tell the few people who were close to him that he was not dead and free them from their pain. He only hoped that everyone would return to their own rooms. Where is Master's body? The elder of the Wu tribe suddenly asked. It disappeared in the flames with Li Xiaotian. The Thundercloud Beast and the Red Moon Beast already had a plan and answered directly. Dead without a complete corpse. This thought appeared in everyone's mind. They could not help but feel a chill in their hearts and become even more sorrowful. Master! The members of the Wu tribe were heartbroken and wailed. Lu Qingmei and Yi Dingdang finally could not take it anymore. They rolled their eyes and fell to the ground. This. Tang Zheng was shocked and almost rushed over again. Quick, help them back to their rooms. Tian Chanzi saw that 3 of them had fainted. If this continued, the whole room would be filled. Everyone helped each other and finally helped them back to their rooms. The others returned to the hall and looked at each other. For a moment, it was as if they had lost their purpose in life and were at a loss. Tang Zheng quickly took action. He first entered Fang Shishir's room. She was the first person who fainted. He had to let her know the truth in time. Shishir, Shishir. He gently shook Fang Shishir and called out softly. She finally woke up. Tang Zheng, am I dead? I finally see you. She suddenly threw herself into Tang Zheng's arms and cried loudly. Tang Zheng hugged her and kept patting her back, comforting her. It's all my fault. I made you suffer and made you sad. Fang Shishir kept shaking her head. I want to die with you. From now on, we will never be separated. We will be reincarnated together. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. What reincarnation? You are not dead and I am not dead. Not dead? Fang Shishir was shocked and stared at him in disbelief. Touch me. My body is still warm. Tang Zheng held her hand and put it on his face. Chapter 1351. Fang Shishir leaned into Tang Zheng's arms and cried tears of joy. After listening to Tang Zheng's explanation of the whole story, her heart still couldn't calm down. You said the Empyrean fairy was kidnapped? Li Xiaotian sacrificed herself to save you. Tang Zheng nodded heavily. Yes, if it wasn't for Li Xiaotian, you definitely wouldn't be able to see me. We used to target her, but I didn't expect that she would save you at the most critical moment. Fang Shishir said with shame. Tang Zheng stroked her hair and said, So, I must save her. Bring her back from the dead. Do you want to go to the ghost realm? Fang Shishir's heartstrings trembled as she guessed Tang Zheng's thoughts. Then, Fang Shishir hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she didn't say anything to dissuade him. Li Xiaotian sacrificed herself for him, so he should save her. The energy of the 9 souls of the Golden Crow fused into your body and detonated your yang energy. Has the yang energy completely calmed down now? Fang Shishir caressed his chest and asked worriedly. This question was very critical and almost hit the nail on the head. Tang Zheng replied, The energy of the Golden Crow's soul is very powerful. Even I haven't completely absorbed it yet, but my cultivation has already increased to the 9th stage of the divine transformation realm. Once I safely refine and absorb this energy, my cultivation will definitely make a qualitative leap. In addition, the yang energy contained in the Golden Crow's soul isn't pure yang energy. It only detonated the pure yang energy in my body. In this case, the pure yang energy is extremely difficult to calm down. Qi Qiyu's judgment is very accurate. However, Li Xiaotian is a virgin, so her pure yin energy is abundant. Moreover, she exhausted all of her pure yin energy, so she barely managed to calm my pure yang energy. In the future, the pure yang energy will still erupt. At this point, Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel gloomy. The age of 20 was a huge threshold for him. His pure yang energy would completely erupt. When that time came, it would definitely be more terrifying and dangerous than this time. Then, how would he be able to turn the situation around? He shook his head inwardly and temporarily discarded these distracting thoughts. When Fang Shishir heard him clearly explain the whole story, she sighed. Her original prejudice against Li Xiaotian disappeared like smoke in thin air. Don't worry, I will never leak the news that you are still alive. This time, we must win this tough battle and defeat Qiyu. Otherwise, there will never be a day of peace. Fang Shishir clenched her fists and firmly supported Tang Zheng's decision. Tang Zheng felt relieved in his heart. "Oh right, you and Mu Hongyan are also?" Suddenly, Fang Shishir's eyes turned and stared straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng lowered his head weakly and said, "I'll go see the others first. We'll talk about other things later." With that, he hurriedly slipped out of the window. Fang Shishir angrily stomped her feet. She was helpless. When she saw his figure disappear, the corner of her mouth revealed a charming smile. Tang Zheng went in and out of Lu Qingmei and Yi Dingdong's room and woke them up. He also explained the whole story and completely freed them from their pain. When he came out of the two's room, the sky was already bright. The Yen family had already left. They discussed for a long time but still couldn't come to a unified conclusion. But without a doubt, the news of Tang Zheng's death would definitely cause a huge uproar. They had to find a way to calm this wave. Otherwise, they would be affected as much as possible. Seeing the others listlessly return to their own rooms, Tang Zheng met with Mu Hongyan and Marshall. The two's endurance far surpassed the other girls. But after suffering such a blow, they were also in a daze. They were his women and also his closest people. If he hid it from them, the pain would be too great. She couldn't bear to see this scene, so she chose to meet them. Joy fell from the sky, and the two girls almost fainted from joy. Then, Tang Zheng met with the witch tribe elder. His loyalty to Tang Zheng could be seen by heaven and earth. He would definitely not leak any information about him. The witch tribe elder was like riding a roller coaster. When he saw Tang Zheng, his old heart almost jumped out of his chest. In the end, Tang Zheng hesitated for a while and decided to meet with Tian Chanzi. He was now the backbone of everyone. Many things depended on him. Without him, this family would not be able to support itself for the time being. Of course, he couldn't let him go. When Tang Zheng removed the illusion and stood in front of Tian Chanzi, he jumped back in shock and shouted, "You brat, you actually faked your death." He saw that Tang Zheng was a living person at a glance. Tang Zheng laughed and said, "If you didn't die, how could I die?" Tian Chanzi's thick eyebrows rose. He blew his beard and stared, "You brat, you can't wait for me to die." Tang Zheng shrugged his shoulders and spread out his hands, saying, "That's what you said. I didn't say anything." The two of them joked with each other for a while, then returned to the main topic. Tang Zheng repeated his real experience. Tian Chanzi listened with wide eyes. After a long time, Tian Chanzi sighed and said, "Your plan is really good, but the price will not be small. Once the news of your death is announced, those wolves in the dark will definitely take action. They will not give up until they tear off a piece of meat from your body." Tang Zheng seemed to have already expected this. He said with a smile, "This requires you to make a move to intimidate the younger generation, so that they don't dare to have any improper thoughts." Tian Chanzi's strength was valiant. He indeed had this ability. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and said, "You brat, you're thinking about me again, aren't you?" Although he said this, he did not object. It was clear that he tacitly agreed with Tang Zheng's arrangement. In addition, you have a more important thing to do. Contact the Yen family and find Yen Qingyi together. I have a feeling that although Yen Qingyi left without saying goodbye and has not been heard from since, she is still a member of the Yen family. She will definitely pay attention to the Yen family's movements. If you work together with the Yen family, you might be able to find her." Tang Zheng urged. "Yen Qingyi is very strange. The Emperor of Heaven merged into her body, but in the end disappeared. Do you think Yen Qingyi will save the Empyrean fairy?" Tian Chanzi asked worriedly. "The Emperor of Heaven is not as simple as you think. Although he has disappeared, once he finds out about his daughter, he will definitely not be indifferent. You just need to work together with the Yen family to find Yen Qingyi. But there is one thing, do not disclose my information to the Yen family for the time being." Tian Chanzi nodded thoughtfully, "Understood." After a pause, he asked, "How confident are you in going to the ghost realm to save her?" Tang Zheng shook his head and said, "I don't know, but I have to try." Tian Chanzi understood his thoughts and could not help but sigh. "All right, then I will wait for your early return." At this moment, the news of Tang Zheng's death had quietly spread to the outside world. For ordinary people, this name was very common. It was just a stranger, and not many people paid attention to it. But for 100 Change Star Lord and Lord Ji Wuxiang, this name was like thunder in their ears. Sometimes it was like a nightmare, making them unable to eat or sleep in peace. Hearing the news of his death, 100 Change Star Lord was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out. He exclaimed, "How could he die? How could he die?" Tang Zheng had repeatedly saved himself from danger in his hands. He subconsciously thought that Tang Zheng could not die, but this time he actually died. In particular, the details of the rumor were worth scrutinizing, which made people have to believe the authenticity of the news. Junko was dumbfounded and said with disappointment, "In this way, I can't kill him with my own hands?" 100 Change Star Lord hugged Junko's slender waist and said, "In short, he is dead. As for who killed him, it is not important. We just need to see the result." Junko turned her head and stared at 100 Change Star Lord absent-mindedly. In the end, she did not refute. The 100 Transformation Star Lord's eyes gradually lit up as he said in high spirits, "Tang Zheng is already dead, so his group of henchmen will definitely be in chaos. This is the best time to kill them all and completely extinguish them." Junko immediately nodded. "Yes, we must eliminate those bastards. They used to be so arrogant, but now that Tang Zheng is gone, let's see how they can continue to do so." 100 Change Star Lord smiled mysteriously. "You will lead the team this time. We must give those henchmen a fatal blow." "Yes." Junko's spirit was greatly roused. Her depressed mood was swept away and she couldn't wait to eliminate the henchmen in the villa. He actually sacrificed himself to shoot down the soul of the Golden Crow and saved millions of people. How selfless. 100 Change Star Lord shook his head with a mocking expression. So what if he is selfless? No one will remember his good deeds. On the contrary, a hat of shit will be placed on his head. Isn't there a rumor in the outside world that someone is inciting the masses to oppose the cultivators? The cultivators in the world will not take the blame. Tang Zheng is dead, and there is no evidence. Wouldn't it be more beneficial for our operation if we put the soul of the Golden Crow on his head? The 100 Transformations Star Sovereign said with a smile, but there was an eerie chill in his words. He had a lot of ability, but he ignored the soul of the Golden Crow and only cared about his own interests. Tang Zheng saved the world, but he put the hat of the Golden Crow's soul on Tang Zheng's head. This was to let the world poke at Tang Zheng's backbone. It was really too vicious. 100 Change Star Lord's vicious nature could be seen from this. As the saying goes, people flock together. Junko did not have the slightest opinion. Instead, her eyes lit up and praised 100 Change Star Lord for being wise and powerful. He actually thought of such a brilliant plan to kill with a borrowed knife. The dead cannot testify. This hat was fixed, and Tang Zheng did not even have the chance to resist. At least, it was so in the eyes of the two. Another thing worth paying attention to is that we must find out who is inciting the hostility between the ordinary people and the cultivators. 100 Change Star Lord also found that the attack of the ordinary people on Tang Zheng's villa was strange, so he was ready to investigate thoroughly. I guess it's the Azure Dragon Palace. They have always hated the cultivators. Of course, they will not miss this opportunity. Junko analyzed. Evidence. 100 Change Star Lord spread out his hand and said to Junko. Junko nodded seriously. "I will find it. Chi Yu is so powerful now, we should be more careful. Especially without the restriction of the Yellow Emperor tribe, Chi Yu's ambition will quickly expand. I have seen this process with my own eyes, so I am very clear. We have hidden so well, he won't find out, right?" Junko asked nervously. Chapter 1352. Emosia escaped in a sorry state. He did not know how far he had run, but after confirming that there were no pursuers behind him, he stopped and panted like an ox. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the heavenly mountain. The morning sun was slowly rising into the sky, and the morning light shone on his body, making him look like a golden light. However, his heart felt as if it had fallen into an endless abyss of darkness. The pain and loss in his eyes were indescribable. He had become a loner, and all of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates had been annihilated. His eyes were red, but his tears did not fall. As powerful as he was, he would not shed tears. In his opinion, that was the sign of a coward. Qiyu Tangjing, I will not let you off. He gritted his teeth, and the anger in his eyes seemed to be able to burn everything. Do you think you can completely defeat me like this? No, I will make a comeback. He thought of Yi Meiyu, who was in the Mi ring, and let her out. Yi Meiyu was extremely weak, and it took her a lot of effort to stabilize her body. She looked around and asked in a daze, "We escaped." She had seen how powerful Qiyu was and was deeply shocked. The fear in her heart was like a stormy sea, almost completely engulfing her. "We're safe," Emo Xie said in a deep voice. He felt a deep sense of disgust towards her reaction, especially the word escape. He was the #1 general under the Yellow Emperor, yet he had to escape. This was a great humiliation, and every time someone said it, it was like sprinkling salt on his wound. What should we do next? Yi Meiyu asked in a daze. I have a way, Emo Xie said. Not only was he escaping, he was also thinking of a countermeasure. In the end, he finally thought of a way. You have a way? Yi Meiyu was overjoyed, her round eyes opened wide. What way? Master's soul not only fused with the Golden Crow's soul, he also has a wisp of his soul that exists in this world. Emo Xie said. Yi Meiyu was shocked and really wanted to curse. If you had known earlier, why would you have spent so much effort to use the Golden Crow's soul to revive the Yellow Emperor? How could such a big commotion be hidden from others? Wasn't this courting death? Now that the entire army was annihilated, he remembered that there was another way. Wasn't this purely looking for trouble for himself? Yi Meiyu cursed in her heart, but she did not dare to say it out loud. It was true that Emo Xie was a defeated general, but to deal with her, it was still a piece of cake. Emo Xie swept a glance at Yi Meiyu and said, You're blaming me for not using this method earlier, right? Yi Meiyu denied. Emo Xie snorted coldly and said, You think I don't want to use it? But the price may not be as small as today. Yi Meiyu's expression suddenly changed as she looked at Emo Xie in fear. She thought to herself, if the price is even greater than this, what kind of price would it be? Now that the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates had been completely wiped out, the price was even greater than this. Could it be that Emo Xie was going to suffer as well? Yi Meiyu was shocked by her own thoughts and looked at him in shock. Emo Xie continued, Master still has a strand of remnant soul left in this world. This news isn't known to many, and most of the people who knew are no longer here. In the past, I didn't want to use this method because I had some misgivings. But now it's different. We have no other choice but to use this method. Since it was a bad plan, it definitely wasn't a good one. Yi Meiyu's heart instantly jumped. She stared at him with sparkling eyes, looking forward to what the so-called bad plan was. This is a bad plan, but it's also the only way. I need to use your power. Emo Xie looked at her with a burning gaze and said in an earth-shattering manner. Use my power? Yi Meiyu pointed at herself in disbelief. Although she was very narcissistic and conceited, she still had some self-awareness. Even Emo Xie was so afraid, what could she do? Could she be cannon fodder? She became more and more nervous. Yes, you have inherited the power of the nightmare. The traceless dream divine ability is very powerful, but you have not cultivated it to the peak. I need you to use the traceless dream divine ability to deal with someone. Emo Xie said in a deep voice. Inner demons? Yi Meiyu frowned and asked, Who are the inner demons? A very powerful person who is proficient in mental attacks. Emo Xie still had a lingering fear in his heart. Although tens of thousands of years had passed, when he thought of the inner demons, many images would still flash through his mind, causing his heart to palpitate. The inner demons were people that even the Yellow Emperor and Qiyu could not kill, so of course he would be afraid. Proficient in mental attacks? Yi Meiyu was surprised. She understood a little. No wonder she said that she needed to use her power, because she was also proficient in mental attacks. But there's one thing, no one can kill him. Emo Xie added. These words were like a heavy hammer that ruthlessly struck Yi Meiyu's heart. Yi Meiyu was dumbstruck. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Unkillable? Are you kidding me? Is there anyone in this world who can't be killed? I don't expect you to be able to hurt him. I just want to use your power to restrain him. Emo Xie said earnestly. Yi Meiyu was a little angry. Wasn't this purely because he didn't believe in her ability? As if seeing through her thoughts, Emo Xie said indifferently, when you see the inner demons, you will naturally understand how powerful he is. I don't believe that there is anyone in this world who is more powerful than me in mental attacks. Yi Meiyu was indignant. Even an expert like the Saint King was unable to completely nullify her attacks. She found it hard to imagine who else could do it. Then where are we going now? Yi Meiyu asked impatiently, as if she wanted to compete with the so-called inner demons. The inner demons were suppressed in a deep abyss back then. According to the current geography, they should be in the 10,000 huge mountains. Emo Xie speculated, when the inner demons were suppressed, a wisp of Master's remnant soul was left behind to suppress the inner demons at all times. Our goal is this wisp of remnant soul, and once we obtain the remnant soul, Master will have a chance to revive. After tens of thousands of years, there were too many variables. Emo Xie could only deduce a rough location. Once your injuries are healed, we will go to the 10,000 huge mountains. Emo Xie made a decision. Neither of them knew that the inner demons were no longer in the abyss and had already been successfully revived. The Yellow Emperor's remnant soul had once attached itself to Tianchanzi's body, but after Tianchanzi gained the upper hand, the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul disappeared without a trace. That's not too difficult. We just have to be on guard against the inner demons. Once we obtain this wisp of remnant soul, no one else will be our match. Yi Meiyu said casually. Emo Xie warned him, don't underestimate the inner demons. He's really not as simple as you think. Sai, you'll know when you see him. Our mission is to take Master's remnant soul away, and we can't release the inner demons. Otherwise, it will be difficult to suppress him again. Emo Xie did not want the inner demons to escape. That would be even more chaotic. They were already mortal enemies with Chiyu, so there was no way for them to join forces to suppress the inner demons again. This might give the inner demons an opportunity to take revenge for being suppressed all those years ago. Emo Xie would never allow this to happen. The two of them were ill-informed and did not know about Tang Zheng's death. However, the Azure Dragon Palace was well-informed and had already received the news. When Lord Ji Wuxiang heard the news, he was also extremely shocked. He ordered the Grandma Li to confirm it again, and in the end, the news of his death was true. Ji Wuxiang no longer had any doubts and let out a long sigh. He is one of the most talented people I have ever met. Back then, when I was unable to communicate with the power of the stars, he was already able to do it. If not for him, heavenly chess would not have been able to succeed so quickly, and he played a part in it. I never thought that he would die just like that. Because the Li Palace was taken away by Tang Zheng, the Grandma Li hated Tang Zheng to the bone, and said with relief, it's a pity that he did not die in our hands, and Li Xiaoyan, that traitor, also died this time. The past is like smoke, let it go, there is no need to be too attached to it. Ji Wuxiang said calmly. Grandma Li humbly accepted the advice. This time, they died in Chiyu's hands, which means that Chiyu's strength is already unfathomable. If we were to compete with him, Grandma Li did not finish her words, and looked at Ji Wuxiang with a burning gaze. Her meaning was self-evident. She was worried about whether Ji Wuxiang had any hope of winning against Chiyu. Ji Wuxiang smiled faintly and said, facts speak louder than words. From his attitude, it could be seen that he was very confident. Grandma Li was relieved and did not forget to flatter. My lord has already achieved great success and can communicate with the power of the stars to control heavenly chess. Chiyu is definitely not your opponent. Ji Wuxiang's expression did not change and said lightly, I also heard a bit of news. This time Tang Zheng's residence was attacked, and there are rumors outside that they are trying to lead ordinary people and cultivators against each other? Ji Wuxiang's tone was very calm, as if he was talking about daily life, but Grandma Li's heart skipped a beat, and she nervously lowered her head, saying, "I ordered my subordinates to do this. I did not deliberately hide it from my lord, but I felt that this matter was too small, and there was no need to disturb my lord's seclusion." During this period of time, Ji Wuxiang was in seclusion, and Grandma Li had to report all the major events outside the door. Although Ji Wuxiang did not respond, she still insisted on doing so. However, she did not report this matter to Ji Wuxiang. She was puzzled. The Lord had just come out of seclusion, so how did he know about this matter? Could it be that he had other sources of information, and someone else had tipped him off? She did not dare to ask this question, and her heart was in turmoil. Ji Wuxiang quietly looked at Grandma Li, who lowered her head even more, and her waist almost bent to the ground. Ji Wuxiang stretched out his hand and placed it on top of Grandma Li's head. Grandma Li trembled all over, as if she had been paralyzed, and did not move. "From now on, you are not allowed to do this again." "Yes, I won't dare." Grandma Li was relieved. With Ji Wuxiang saying so, this matter could be considered over. This matter is superfluous, and it will be easy to give the game away. In this world, there are other forces besides us, so why should we be the first to stand out? Let the cultivators fight among themselves, and then we will come out to clean up the mess. Isn't that better? Ji Wuxiang said patiently. Grandma Li finally raised her head and said doubtfully, "The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates were almost completely wiped out. Who else can fight against Qiyu? If we let him grow stronger, wouldn't it be very disadvantageous for us?" Chapter 1353. He held Li Xiaoyan's body in his arms, looking at her closed eyes. Tang Zheng's heart felt like it fell into an ice cave. He took a deep breath and stabilized his mind. It was midnight, the time of the day when the yin qi was the strongest. A gust of cold wind blew, making people's hair stand on end. Tang Zheng was in the middle of the cold wind, as if he did not see it. His eyes did not move away from Li Xiaoyan's body. Suddenly, a dark door opened in front of him. 2 ghost messengers walked out. The ghost messengers looked around and said, "This human world seems different from yesterday. At midnight, the yang qi is so strong. If it was stronger, we wouldn't need to come to the human world to capture souls." Yes, I don't know what happened in the human world. Such a big change happened. Unlike our ghost world, under the rule of Dizong of Goguryeo, we are thriving. One day, the human world will be left far behind by our ghost world. The ghost messengers proudly said. Tang Zheng heard these words, but was indifferent. He knew that the strong yang qi must be because the soul of the golden crow rose to the sky, so there was an extraordinary amount of yang qi descending to the earth. Even after a day, this yang qi did not dissipate. "Let's capture this soul first. We still have to capture other souls." The ghost messengers took out the token. A burst of light bloomed from the token. Li Xiaoyan's soul flew out from her body. A black light flashed in the ghost messenger's hand, and a chain flew out, directly toward Li Xiaoyan's soul. Tang Zheng still did not raise his head, but it was as if there were eyes on the top of his head. He suddenly reached out and grabbed the chain. The ghost messengers were pulled by Tang Zheng's strength, staggered, and almost fell to the ground, pale with fright, shouted, "Who is it?" They thought it was a sneak attack by other experts, but when they looked, they found out that it was the man holding the body. The ghost messengers looked at each other. In the past, when capturing souls, they had never encountered any obstacles, but this time it was so strange. "He can see us," one of the ghost messengers exclaimed. "Of course he can see, otherwise how could he grab our soul lock?" Another ghost messengers unhappily said. "Then what should we do? Do you need me to teach you that?" The ghost messenger's face became serious as he glared at Tang Zheng and said, "We don't care who you are, but you dare to obstruct the ghost messenger's work. Do you know what this means?" Tang Zheng finally raised his head and looked at Li Xiaoyan's soul floating in the air. Her soul and consciousness were still drifting and had yet to regain consciousness. "You want to capture her soul? Did you ask for my permission?" Tang Zheng asked with a cold expression. The ghost messengers looked at each other as if they had just heard the funniest joke in the world. They jokingly said, "This is a matter of course." Do you think you are the Dizong of Goguryeo? I know this is your duty. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wasted so much time talking to you. With me here, you have no way to capture her soul. I will go with her to the ghost realm and then see the Dizong of Goguryeo. Tang Zheng did not make things difficult for the ghost messengers and directly said, "What, you actually want to go with us to the ghost realm? You are seeking your own death, do you know that?" The ghost messengers laughed. Tang Zheng declined to comment. Another ghost messenger said, "He must have been too sad and turned into an idiot. Wait a minute, how does he know about the Dizong of Goguryeo?" Hearing him say it so smoothly, could it be that he knows the Dizong of Goguryeo? He is a living person. How could he know the Dizong of Goguryeo? He must have heard about the Dizong of Goguryeo from us and deliberately came to scare us. Yes, it must be like that. Now that there are more and more cultivators in the human world, we actually met this time. Everything has a beginning. In the future, there will be more situations like this. We might as well take him back and let the Dizong of Goguryeo make the decision. In the future, we can also do things according to the rules. Don't be caught in the middle. We are not human to begin with. I don't often come to the human world. I learned it from them. I'm used to it. Tang Zheng ignored the ghost messengers and directly said, "Let's go. Then we will capture your soul. But I warn you, once your soul goes to the ghost realm, you will die. Don't even think about returning to the human world." The ghost messengers reminded. Tang Zheng did not say a word. He put the body in his arms back into Sumer world. With a wave of his hand, Li Xiaoyan's soul flew down. He softly said, "Li Xiaoyan, let's go to the ghost realm together." With that, he strode into the ghost gate. Li Xiaotian seemed to be attracted by a huge force. His feet did not touch the ground as he lightly flew into the ghost gate. The two ghost messengers stood in place, staring at each other in shock. They exclaimed, "He actually dared to use his body to pass through the ghost gate to the ghost realm." The human body was afraid of the ghost realm's yin qi. Once the yin qi was produced, it would be beyond redemption and death was certain. Tang Zheng's action completely subverted the ghost messenger's understanding. He is willing to die. Why are we worried about him? Hurry up and go in. Don't let him go too far. The ghost messengers hurriedly jumped into the ghost gate. The scene between heaven and earth changed dramatically. The sky was even lower, gloomy and gloomy. The cold wind blew, making people shudder. Tang Zheng stood in place. Li Xiaoyan's soul finally stepped on the ground. When he came to the ghost realm, his soul seemed to have returned home. It was almost the same as a human in the human world. Li Xiaotian's confused eyes lit up little by little. His chaotic brain also became clear. After a person died, the memory of his life would still exist. After drinking Meng Po's soup, he would forget the memory of his life and become a simple ghost. "Tang Zheng, is that you?" Li Xiaotian screamed in shock. Her eyes were full of disbelief. Tang Zheng showed a bitter smile, took her hand and said, "It's me." When the soul was in the human world, it was illusory and had no physical body. Once the soul came to the ghost realm, it would become a physical body. Therefore, Tang Zheng held Li Xiaoyan's hand. "Didn't I die?" Li Xiaoyan asked doubtfully, "How can I meet you? Could it be that you—" Li Xiaoyan covered her mouth with her hand. Her seductive appearance was involuntarily revealed. It was very moving. Even after her death, her every frown, every smile, and every gesture exuded boundless charm. "I'm not dead. I want to save you and bring you back to life." Tang Zheng directly stated his purpose. He did not hide anything. "Save me? If I'm dead, you can still save me?" This was hard for Li Xiaotian to imagine. Tang Zheng nodded heavily. Saving a dead person was not only to bring the soul back to the body. In that way, he could imprison Li Xiaoyan's soul and not let her leave his body without going to the ghost realm. He had to go to the ghost realm and seek help from the Dizong of Goguryeo. Only then could he be reborn. As for Chi Yu and the inner demons, these powerhouses from tens of thousands of years ago, their souls had been cultivated to a very powerful state. As long as their souls were not destroyed, they would always have a way to be reborn. Therefore, when they killed the enemy, they would always destroy the enemy's soul. Only then could they be considered to have completely killed the enemy. When the Saint Monarch died in battle, Emo Xie did the same. When the Ganzhou sword pierced his body and ended his life, his soul was also completely destroyed, and his body and soul were completely destroyed. This was also why there were very few cultivators' souls in the ghost realm. The cultivator's soul was too powerful. Once they came to the ghost realm, they would often cause chaos in the ghost realm. The ghost realm was happy to see this and did not like these troublemakers. The two ghost messengers also heard Tang Zheng's words. They couldn't help but laugh. Arrogant words, the dead can't be brought back to life. Haven't you heard of this sentence? You actually want to bring the dead back to life. You're going against the heavens. It won't work at all. We've been here for so many years, but we've never seen such a thing. Yes, this is a fool's dream. TSK, today's mission is really interesting. We'd like to see how he can bring people back to life. Let's go. Don't just talk about old times. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. The ghost messengers urged. Li Xiaoyan's face was very ugly. She looked at Tang Zheng with worry and said, "Isn't this very difficult? How about we just forget about it?" Tang Zheng said with an unquestionable tone, "Don't listen to the ghost messenger's nonsense. What kind of difficulty is there? Even if there is a difficulty, I will overcome it. I must save you." Li Xiaoyan's lips curled into a smile. She looked at him and said, "Why are you so good to me? You're even better to me. What I do for you is not even 1/10,000th of what you do for me. You gave your life to me. No matter what I do, I will never be able to make it up to you." Tang Zheng said emotionally. Li Xiaotian shook her head. Her finger covered Tang Zheng's mouth. "What I do for you is of my own accord. I don't need you to make it up to me. I know your heart." Tang Zheng nodded. If at this time he still didn't understand her feelings, then he would be a complete idiot. He couldn't help but grab her hand. Li Xiaotian's eyes were full of shyness, but she didn't lower her head. She looked at him affectionately. Their eyes met. Tang Zheng's heart was also filled with tenderness. He couldn't help but bend down and lightly touch her lips. It was very cold. Tang Zheng's heart was burning hot. He hugged her waist. Li Xiaotian lightly trembled. She straightened her body, then immediately softened and snuggled into his embrace. She had fantasized about this scene countless times. Her dream became reality, but it was in the ghost realm. But her heart was still incomparably happy, sweet and satisfied. Now even if my soul scatters, I am perfectly satisfied. I have no regrets. Li Xiaotian said emotionally. Don't say such discouraging words. You'll be fine. Tang Zheng advised. Looking at the two of them being lovey-dovey, the ghost envoys felt a sense of unreality. Was this the ghost realm? Why weren't these two afraid at all? They treated this place like their own home. This is the ghost realm, not your human world. The ghost envoys urged. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes. He stared at the two unromantic guys. Holding Li Xiaoyan's hand, he walked away with large strides. Hey, wait a minute. The two ghost envoys quickly chased after them. Their cultivation was not as good as Tang Zheng's. They used all their strength to barely keep up with Tang Zheng's pace. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.